Hey everybody, just AJ and Richard here at the top of the show.
Yo, what up?
We just wanted to let you all know about a survey that we would love for you to fill out if you're a fan of this podcast or Cult Popture in general. You can find a link to the survey in the show notes below. You can do it on your phone. It's really easy. You can
do it on the bus
while you're listening
could do it
to this
on
episode.
the train.
Yeah,
you could do it in a box. You could do it with a fox,
but don't.
But fuck if you do it with a fox.
Let's get to the episode. I was in the mall today, Richard, and I was walking, through the mall as you do, and this man was walking towards me, like going the other way, and he had this really pronounced beard. And for the listeners who don't know what I look like, I also currently have a very pronounced beard. And as I passed him, he made eye contact with me, and he didn't smile, but he did start rigorously stroking his beard while maintaining eye contact with me. And I've never been accosted by another bearded person in the mall before.
Wow. AJ, what were you doing in the mall?
I had just finished seeing Mission Impossible Fallout.
But seeing as how you do a franchise-based podcast, shouldn't
Correct.
you save franchise-based films for when you cover them on the podcast?
Well, it's funny that you should bring that up, actually, Richard, because surprise, we're back, baby. And there were no golden retrievers in the Mission Impossible series. If there were, I don't know what I would have done. It probably wouldn't have registered with me. There could even be some in there, and I just haven't fully realized.
Yeah. I've now got like a filter that just like does not allow me to see golden retrievers because I've just had enough. Like literally, my brain was like, this is the amount of golden retrievers you're allowed to see in one lifetime. Yeah. Boom, you can't see anymore, and I've wasted it at 25.
Yeah, and like you can't. Your dream, I remember you telling me, was to one day own a golden retriever.
Yeah, maybe I do. I just don't know.
My name is AJ. Hello, everybody.
And my name is Richard. Hello, everybody.
And as we kind of touched on, you are listening to Film Franchise Fortnights on the Cult Popture podcast. The Film Franchise Fortnights is a bit of a misnomer now. What's it called when something's still called what it used to be? But
it's a misnomer, yeah. Or TV Tropes has a thing for it. It's called what is it called?
It's like a relic word or something like that.
Yeah,
relic word's different.
Yeah.
Relic word is something like spick and spick and span. You'd never say spick. Well, you would if you were being racist, but I wasn't, and context is important. Anyway, yeah, this is our fifth week in a row doing Film Franchise Fortnights, which really doesn't make sense. But for those who have just tuned into this show, we spent the last month watching the entire Earbud cinematic universe, and we didn't want to wait any longer to see this year's biggest action film, or at least August's biggest action film, Mission Impossible Fallout. But because this podcast governs our lives, we were like, hey, let's just watch the 5 preceding films and do another film franchise week.
And also
episode.
By doing an extra episode here, we are putting ourselves back onto the week. So if we hadn't done 5 weeks in a row, we would still be doing Film Franchise Fortnights this week. So, maybe behind the scenes, we like to keep it on this week for our own personal reasons. Maybe not. Who knows? I mean, I do know why we did it, but
2 people exactly know. Cool. So, you're like, you do the talking this time, Richard, because I've been leading our listeners through 17 Earbud films for the past month, and now you get to the 2 waveforms that make up your track and my track is going to be a little bit Richard heavy this time instead of a little bit AJ heavy.
That's right. Our artifact title is what it calls on TV tropes, by the way.
Okay.
And speaking of, I'm so glad you segued me into this because I didn't really know how to describe it, but I looked this up. So including Mission Impossible, you have led the podcast through 106 films, AJ.
Including Mission Impossible.
Yeah, so including this episode, you have led us through 106 episodes. I don't know if have we made this clear on the podcast, or have we made this official announcement? But AJ and I do generally take turns hosting the episode in quotation marks, where one of us will do all the research and.
Wait, you're hosting this one though, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
how am I leading you, including a Mission Impossible?
Well, because including. Up until this episode, you've done 106. I've done, of course, 154 films.
That feels right. That feels accurate.
Yeah. But
wait. That doesn't necessarily mean you've hosted more episodes than I have. It means you've hosted longer franchises.
Yeah. So because I did Freddy vs. Jason, which was 20. I did Godzilla, which was 31, and I did Land Before Time, which was 14.
Right.
I've done all of our biggest franchises.
Earbud is the only really big one that I did. Isn't it crazy where we draw the line? Because we did Land Before Time in one go, which is two. Earbud was three more films then, and then we also did Freddy vs. Jason in one go, which is three more films than ever.
And plus, it's two franchises.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of consistency, but we will from now on. But when we got to Godzilla, that was the first time we were like, all right, we actually have to do a multifaceted, multi-week episode.
Yeah, well,
now.
Land Before Time we couldn't do because the only thing we could do is the original ones and then the semi-reboot, which is 13 and 1.
Yeah.
But Freddy vs. Jason we should have split up, and if we got it now we probably would have, because we have a better idea of what this podcast is. And if we'd done Godzilla made sense because there is actually a defined way of splitting it up.
Yeah, and we one of the first episodes we ever did was the Universal Mummy movies, and there are actually about 4 or 5 different sections of the overall Mummy series, and I regret that, Richard. I wish we'd done every Mummy movie.
Oh, but thank fucking God we didn't.
Well, they get better, I would assume.
Because there's a middle one as well. Also, just for another up top random trivia, which we like to do now, this is our second 6-film franchise.
What? Oh, the other one is, I know this one, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Correct. Yeah,
yes.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah.
6 is, you'd think it's not too crazy of a number. But
to be fair as well, this is our first 6-film franchise that's one continuous story, whereas
that's true.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was at least 2 reboots, I believe.
Yeah, there was 3 different canons, which we should have done in separate episodes.
Then that means we'd have an episode of the podcast that was dedicated to the single animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our up top random trivia. It's also, I was thinking about this on the car. I was thinking about this in the car.
What are you, Ethan Hunt? Riding on top of a car?
This is our second franchise to have a villain which is played by an actor with the name Sean H. Because Sean Harris is a villain in Rogue Nation and Fallout, Entries 5 and 6 and Mission Impossible, and he's also the bad guy in Cats and Dogs. He's not also... The bad guy in Cats and Dogs is Sean Hayes. Imagine
if I just magically pulled out yet another villain who was played by Sean H.
I was half expecting you to, and in the car I was like, oh, what's AJ going to throw at me? That's a great
statistic. One of the pieces of feedback that we got after we did our Scream episode was how good it was to hear the two of us actually like a franchise for a change, because we watch a lot of shit on this podcast.
Especially lately.
Yeah, and then almost immediately we got 17 Earbud films. So we haven't been really giving the audience what they want in a way, much due to the nature of the sort of random design of how we choose the franchise. Sort of random.
But maybe
random.
we'll be doing it this episode.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what? I'm anticipating this to be a good episode, Richard, because Mission Impossible after 17 Earbud films, what a delight it was to watch these like proper movies that are like temples in pop culture, that are like made by people who really care about what they're doing. There are so many like professionals and auteurs involved in this movie. It felt like taking a warm bath, you know. It felt like eating a chicken roast. A chicken roast after a month of eating McDonald's
beef roast.
Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. But I've spoiler alert, I had such a wonderful time this week watching these movies.
All right, well, let's just crack into the film, shall we? And I'll just let everyone know as well, if you haven't seen the new one, maybe we'll chuck a thing at the start like we did with Ghostbusters. I don't know, maybe we didn't. If we didn't, this will be the first you're hearing about it. But we are going to go through the films one by one. There'll be a definitive point where it starts being spoilery for Fallout if you haven't seen the latest one. So,
that being said, we are quite late to the game to review Fallout.
But I mean, yeah, maybe
it sadly came out the same week as Earbud. So
yeah, Earbud was in cinemas and we had to go see one or the other. Yeah, like I don't know, mate, I was thinking about this, like who are the people that could be listening to this? Maybe you've just seen Fallout, you want to do, or maybe you haven't seen any of the Mission Impossible films, but you're interested in Fallout and you want to hear a recap and kind of a review or discussion of the other 5 films to catch you up, and then go to see Fallout. So you could turn it off and then go see Fallout if you want.
You could want that.
Yeah. But so, the first film in this franchise came out in 1996, and it was directed by Brian De Palma, and it was called Mission Impossible. AJ.
Yes.
What is that about?
I'm going to try to be pretty simple with these because a lot of the plots get quite complicated that won't. If they come up, we'll explain it when we talk about it. But basically, it's about a secret agent who works for an agency called IMF that are tasked with particularly difficult missions. And after
what does IMF stand for?
Impossible Mission Force. And after his entire team I think more or less his entire team appears to be killed off, he discovers has he been framed in the first one? He goes rogue almost immediately.
Basically, his entire they were sent on like a fake mission to find out who the mole in their team was. And then everyone else in his team seemingly gets taken out. So they're like, Ethan, you're probably the mole, and he's like, no, I've been set up, and goes rogue.
Yeah, so it's Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise. The first one also stars John Voight, and John Reno. I remembered his name. And Ving Rhames, I think, is the only other actor who shows up in every film.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that one. If you're like, what's Mission Impossible? The most iconic scene from Mission Impossible is Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt hanging from the roof above a top secret base, top secret room, and he can't touch the floor or else it sets off an alarm. So there's a very, very famous scene, probably the most famous scene from the Mission Impossible intellectual property, and in all of pop culture, which is him hanging an inch above the floor, and it's that scene. Beautiful scene. One thing we haven't mentioned, actually, Richard, is neither you or I had actually seen.
Yes, actually, that's a very good point.
Before,
yeah, I hadn't seen any of them, and I've been like, AJ, let's do film franchise Fortnights, and then we'll go see Fallout. And they're like, like let's do it. And AJ's been like, oh, maybe, I don't know, like whatever, I don't know, And then I'll be like, oh, bro, like, let's do it. I'm so excited to see Fallout. Like, and he's like, I don't know, bro. Anyway, but then we ended up being in the middle of Earbud, as I said. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to start watching these films.
No, well, if I remember correctly, actually, Richard, I thought we were planning to do Fallout, but the weeks didn't line up. Wasn't that what happened?
Maybe, yeah, actually, because there was a few, we went through, there's like a few upcoming releases, and yeah, we were like, like ones that tie into big franchises that especially ones that we haven't seen, and we were like, okay, with this one, but it doesn't like fit on the week perfectly to be like, the first people talking about it kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, if we had done this episode last week, or like as soon as it came out, that would have been last week, and then if we hadn't done Earbud, there wouldn't have been episode on that week. But yeah,
fun times.
Yeah, fun times. Anyway, but yeah, I was like, fuck it, I just really want to see Fallout because I really like the trailer, and I was like, I'm a completionist, so I want to watch all the films beforehand before going seeing it. So I was like, fuck it, even if we not do it for Film Franchise Fortnights, I'm going to watch these films. And then after Earbud, we were like, we need it, we need a win.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So, basically they... Yeah, trying to find the mole in his team, while also, getting in the heist scene, the drop and hang from the ceiling thing. He's trying to retrieve the knock list. That's kind of the MacGuffin of this film. And AJ, do you know what the knock list is?
Remind me.
So another thing that it ties into my definition of the knock list, but it's mentioned a lot in these films about disavowing. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that means, AJ?
I would assume if you are disavowed, it's the government saying we no longer sanction what you do.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, pretty much. So the plot of this film hinges around
James gunned could be another way to put it.
A lot of loyalty for a fired gun. So the plot of this film hinges around the potential release of the knock list, that's NOC. Traditionally, when a spy is caught, the spy's home country will admit that person was a spy, and then get that person back by releasing a spy that can do. So, AJ, if you caught one of my spies, and you were like, hey, I have one of your spies, but yeah, okay, he's a spy of mine, I got one of yours, let's trade them back. But to disavow, if I was to disavow, you're like, hey, I've got this spy, I'd be like, nah, they're not mine. You can kill them, and that's what disavowing is. Okay. So it results in getting a lot of, basically you're free game for anyone to kill, and we won't protect you.
So what's a knock list?
So a knock list, a knock agent or non-official cover is one who's been disavowed by their country should they be captured.
Right.
So I could disavow my agent, but they would still be trying to infiltrate you, I guess. But they're no longer connected to me. And
one thing I was thinking about IMF the further we got through these films is wouldn't really want to work for them, eh? Like if you don't have like a strong sense of justice and like wanting to save the world, they're not very good to their employees.
Yeah, they're not very trusting, eh? Every film they're like, I think Ethan's gone rogue. It's like, well, we've thought that before, and he's never done that. No, but this time,
yeah.
So, they get it back. There's a big chase scene on a train through a tunnel with a helicopter coming back through the tunnel as well.
It's so good. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so are we talking about them film by film?
Yeah.
So first initial thoughts of Mission Impossible 1 is that beyond those two scenes, beyond the
dangle scene.
The dangle scene and the train scene.
Yeah.
It's not that great. Like it's fine, but it's very weirdly edited. There's a lot of like real weird. There's one part in it that I thought was real strange, and this is spoilers for Mission Impossible. So he basically while he's on the run, he finds John Voight's character, and John Voight tells him about who really killed the team. And while he's telling you who really killed the team, we cut to revealing that it was actually John Voight's character who's responsible for it all. But it's not what John Voight's saying. It's not inherently clear that Ethan's working it out.
Right, okay, yeah. Because the thing is that it is Ethan working it out at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But there's nothing to lend... It's I don't know. It was kind of weirdly edited, but it's not a big deal.
Yeah. It is like... And for a franchise that prides itself on, especially we'll get to this in the later entries, but on like doing it for real and like, oh my god, do you know he actually did this? The final scene is very like a lot of CGI, very green screened. But I don't know, it's like, and we'll probably talk about this more as well, but this film came out in 1996 and it feels like a 1996 spy action thriller. And that's great.
Okay. This is a statement for the whole Mission Impossible franchise, and this isn't. I don't think this is something that you or I have made up. I think this is something that's been talked about in various think pieces I've seen. Is that the cool thing about the Mission Impossible franchise is until maybe, actually, I'm going to say including the most recent one, they were all released in very different eras of mainstream film, and so. The first one is, as you say, it is a 1996 film. Like, it might be the most 1996 film. And I would almost describe every single Mission Impossible film as the most year it came out film of that year. Because, like, and because we haven't talked about critics' opinions or anything yet, but I'm aware that the second one is regarded as sort of the weak link of the six, and I reckon that's because, and we'll talk about this more when we get to part two, I reckon that's because the early 2000s is a cheesier time period than the mid-90s and everything else has been too recent for us to be like, oh, that looks cheesy now, or that hasn't aged well. Stuff in 1996 was so middle of the line, whereas stuff in 2000 was very hey, the Matrix changed film forever, let's do the Matrix. So you know, everything feels very chrome and slick and yeah.
But we'll talk about like what I think that'll be fun as well, talking about what defines that kind of film, that era or that year of film. But critics score, so this scored 63 on the golden whatever that is, Rotten Tomatoes.
It's quite low. If a film scored 63% these days, and I was looking forward to it, I'd be like, oh, that's a shame. But you know, I mean, it probably is a 63% film. I don't know. It's not. It didn't blow me away other than those two scenes. But that makes sense. Yeah. Now, and AJ, do you know where Mission Impossible comes from? It's a TV show, right? It is a TV show. It's a TV series which starred Martin Landau. But it was apparently, I haven't seen any of it. I didn't do that. And guess what? This week. But it was more of an ensemble piece. So I don't think you'd have it's not like Ethan goes on a mission every week. Even though I think Jim Phelps, who's John Voight's character, was one of the main characters of the TV show. Right. But that came out in 1996, went through to 1973, and that was revived in 1988 for 2 seasons. But stars of the original declined cameos. They spoke out against the film. One of them said that he walked out during a screening of it. The guy who played Jim Phelps in the TV series, I think he was the one that walked out, and he was like, nah, because Jim Phelps ends up being he's John Voight's character, and he ends up being a traitor. And he was like, nah, they shouldn't have done that to my character, and all the stuff. He was actually asked to reprise the role, but he turned it down. So, there would have been more connected originally. But right, so a genuine sequel to the TV series. Yeah, and Martin Landau said, now they just made action movies, not Mission Impossible films, because Mission's a head game, whereas these were action movies. That's fair, but it is... The fact is, when you say Mission Impossible, you think of Tom Cruise. You don't think of Martin Landau. Mission Impossible might be one of the only properties that I was surprised to find out was a TV show originally. Like, usually I know these things, but I remember finding a DVD for Mission Impossible, the TV show, in the warehouse once and being like, what? Makes sense, though, because stuff like the theme song that everyone knows. Yeah, that's from the TV show. Yeah. But it's a pretty action-packed film. Would you agree? I would agree. But did you know that Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise's character, doesn't actually fire a gun at any point in the movie? I didn't know that. Yeah. Just a wee fun little fact there. And speaking of Tom Cruise, he's getting pretty fucking old now. He's 1 year younger than John Voight was in this movie. Wow. Isn't that ridiculous? He looks so much better than John Voight did. Or I think in Fallout, his age is starting to show a bit.
Really?
To be honest,
That's interesting.
Not
We'll get to that when
not
we get to
intensely, but yeah. I had a very transcendent experience watching specifically the train scene in Mission Impossible 1. So if you haven't seen it, basically, I won't bore you with the plot contrivances that get them there, but basically it's Tom Cruise chasing John Voight on the top of a train, and they go through a tunnel, and Jean Reno's character is in a helicopter, like tailing the train, and it's this epic. It's so good. And when I watched it, I was like, I have no memory of ever seeing this scene, but I know I've seen it. Because when I was a little kid, Richard, I would always play outside. I would play in my backyard, little movies. I'd play by myself. Like, I wouldn't need someone else there. I'd make up little movies and video games. And the scenario of characters chasing each other on top of a train or like hanging out of a plane, etc., were like ingrained in me, just so that I could like hang off my trampoline and pretend I was falling off something, and like, you know what I mean? Like the imagery flashing before my eyes watching Mission Impossible. I was like, this somehow reached me when I was a child and inspired me to no end. I remember being on the playground at primary school and playing with a friend who later became my best friend, and this is one of the first times we ever hung out. And I remember holding on to the slide and not falling down it, and he was holding on to my legs, and we were pretending that we were like hanging out of a plane and stuff, and he was the villain. I had to like kick him off,
and that
so he'd
boy
fly
grew
down
up
the
to
slide.
be me,
No,
your best friend.
His name is Aaron.
Oh.
He has a kid now.
Oh well, can't win them all.
So
but yeah,
I don't know. There was a nurturing element to this franchise.
yeah,
that I
there is
really
a familiarity of doing a train scene. Like a lot of good video games have them as well. But yeah, so moving on to Mission Impossible 2. This was directed by John Woo, and it came out in, as we said, 2000.
Even the directors are of their time. You know,
Yeah,
like even the directors for each movie is like, oh, that's the guy who did all those movies in that era, or at least his films are indicative of that era.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so what's Mission Impossible 2 about?
So basically, Ethan is recruited again for a mission, and this time it's to retrieve a biohazard, like a virus, like a disease called Chimera.
Yep.
And the person who has, did he make it, or he's trying to buy it or something like that, is the ex-lover of the love interest played by Tilda Swinton. No, Tandy Newton. Same name, Tilda Tandy Newton. In this film, and so Tandy Newton's character's got to go undercover and like seduce her ex so that her and Ethan Hunt and everyone can get on board and stop the disease from getting out to the world.
Yeah, this is the disease one.
Yeah.
So yeah, this scored a little bit lower, 57% with critics on Rotten Tomato.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you notice that this is the only time in the Mission Impossible franchise where he just does a mission?
Yes, I was going to say that. I couldn't remember. I was like, is this the only one where he doesn't go rogue?
Yeah, this is the only one where from start to finish, it's just Ethan doing a mission.
That's amazing. And it's weird that it's the worst one, because it shouldn't be. Like,
yeah, because it's like they all kind of feel similar doing them, and especially watching them in such quick succession that it's all like, oh, they were a double agent. Oh, I'm going rogue. Oh, we can't trust Ethan. But
yeah.
I mean, they make it feel fresh. These like, these movies are great.
No, they do. They are creative with how he goes rogue. So Mission Impossible 2, I didn't think it was that bad.
Oh, no, not
like,
at all.
I'd heard it was like real bad, like a classic inferior sequel. I could definitely see why people didn't like it. I think it's a better made film. As I said, I don't think it's as, like how I was saying, how Mission Impossible is real weirdly edited. This doesn't strike out to you, and maybe that's just because I'm a video editor, so I notice it. But like this one feels like a competently made film. I would say where it's let down is, you know, that you know, they don't do it so much anymore in like Family Guy and stuff, but they would joke about how when an explosion goes off and there's like 6 different angles of it happening over and over again. That happens in this once or twice, and that is kind of the like, oh, okay, this is an early 2000s movie.
Yeah, it's a real John Woo style as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, there's
the fight scenes are better because of John Woo.
Yeah,
so there you go.
Like and also this is the kind of introduction to like the whoa, we did that for real kind of thing. And this is the only scene I'd ever seen of a Mission Impossible film as well. Is the opening scene where he's like free climbing on this massive rock face. And it's like no safety net, no wires. He's just jumping between rocks. But then he gets like your mission, should you choose to accept it, in a pair of sunglasses, and it has this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. And he like throws the glasses towards the camera, and they spin in slow motion and explode and reveal the title. And I was like, oh, that's so 2000.
Yeah, it's the last pre 9/11 one as well, which. It does. This might be a fantastic case study in the idea of post 9/11 film, because you've got a good sample sizes on either side of 9/11. So like that we'll talk probably more about that with 3. But would it make sense if I said the fact that he gets the mission through sunglasses is really 2000? Does that make sense? And like there's the big set piece is a motorcycle chase. Like these things, they just feel so cool, like in quotation marks, cool kind of thing.
Yeah. But yeah, like apparently John Woo just like could not watch that opening scene. And Tom was like, no, I'll do it again. Okay, I'll keep doing it. And like
wait, so he actually climbed up a mountain?
Yeah. He had cables on that were edited out, but there was no safety net or anything. Apparently Tom Cruise like refused to drop the scene because like they didn't want to do it, because he's like, no, this is the perfect way to reintroduce Hunt. And it's real interesting. Like you read behind the scenes of these kind of films, and there's a lot of like Cruise insisted on this. This was Cruise's idea, and like you need to remember that not normally actors don't have that much pull in their movies, but he is a producer on these films, so a lot of there's like massive story decisions are his ideas, and like set pieces and everything like that are all Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, man.
It's bloody Tom Cruise, mate.
He's a paradox, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like,
I think once we've gone through them, I've got a list of like talking points, and one of them is just Tom Cruise, and I want to have a discussion with you about Tom Cruise. Okay. So you might have heard a rumor, and people out there might have heard this rumor as well, that Tom Cruise is like a total diva to work with, and when you're working on a Tom Cruise film, they basically tell you don't talk to him and don't look at him and don't look him in the eye. Have you ever heard that?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, so like this is something I've read online. Do you know that started from this film? Because, and it is somewhat based in truth, but not really at all. So there's a scene where they're filming at like a racetrack, and it's a very crowded scene. But when they were looking at the rushes, they noticed that heaps of extras were just like, holy fuck, it's Tom Cruise. And would just stare at him. And it's like Ethan's supposed to bleed into the crowd, but everyone's like, oh my god, just like
Children of the Corn style.
Yeah, just staring at Ethan. And it kept on ruining the take, so they had to send out a memo being like, stop looking at Tom Cruise. And that's where that came from, because that like somehow led him to be like, oh, we were told not to look at Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that's funny.
Interesting, yeah. And also another big fiasco that this film started was Metallica recorded a song called I Disappear for the soundtrack, which appears in the end credits. And an early version of that was leaked on Napster, and that's what started the whole Metallica v Napster thing.
Oh, I didn't know there was a Metallica v Napster thing.
Oh, do you not know about it? It's like one of the it's a huge story of the early 2000s. Basically, they sued Napster, and P2P sharing.
Nice.
There's like documentaries about it. It's a whole big thing, man.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Also, we haven't spoken about the villain in this film. There's an Australian guy called Doug Ray Scott. Do you know him from anything else?
He looked familiar, but that might just be because he's a pretty generic-looking dude.
Yeah, so the thing is...
Well, looking villain, I should say. Not just a normal dude.
If you, like... he's one of those, like, he would only ever be referred to as Mission Impossible 2's Doug Ray Scott. However, he almost had a bit of a bigger career than that, but this film went over with its shooting, and so he had to pull out of playing Wolverine in X-Men. And at the last second, they got in Hugh Jackman.
No. Holy shit.
Like a few days before they started shooting, they're like, fuck, there's another Australian.
For Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
The worst mission. You could have done it for any other Mission Impossible
Imagine
film.
that. Like, this guy would be like an A-lister now.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's actually real sad.
Yeah, it's real sad, eh? But, and we wouldn't know who Hugh Jackman was. He'd just be some Australian theatre singer, because that's
The guy
basically
from
what he
Kate
was.
and Leopold? Okay.
As Wolverine? No, I don't think so, mate. But yeah, there is a real cool scene with him where he's like got this knife and it's like stabbing down and it stops and Ethan's like real close to Ethan's eye.
Yeah.
It's like another real 2000s thing. But yeah, they did that for real. That's like an actual knife blade a quarter of an inch away from Tom Cruise's eyeball. It was one of those like, nah, I insist on doing it for real. And the way they did it was like the knife. So Tom Cruise was lying on the ground, and then they attached the knife to a cable that was attached to something else that was like measured to be exactly the tip of the knife be exactly that distance from Tom Cruise's eyeball. And so Doug Ray Scott can go down with all of his force, and it will stop right on Tom Cruise's eye.
That is nuts. Why would you? You don't need to do that.
And this is like Tom
to.
being like, I insist on this actually happening.
Because the way it's shot, you could superimpose the wide of him holding the knife and throwing it down, and then just cut to the close-up, and you could even set up the knife there so you're safe and you don't have to have the action.
Yeah.
That's insane. There's a similar problem with when he did the zero gravity scene in The Mummy, is that like you these things need to be like, holy shit, he actually did this, not that could have been faked and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know. I mean, the knife is like, because the knife is so shiny and sharp, it does actually kind of look CG. But, and we'll talk about this more later when the stunts get bigger, but you do start to really appreciate that these things are being done for real.
Yeah. And then you start to wonder which part of it was done for real.
Yeah.
But by Fallout, you're like, which part of this was him actually doing this?
All of it, mate.
Did he really crash a helicopter?
But yeah, so the this film also introduced Tom Cruise's idea, actually, of the kind of revolving door of directors that they sort of implemented. So, like, each one is supposed to be like a new installment, a new episode of Mission Impossible, and feel different from the previous one.
Oh, is that intentional? That's great.
Yeah, and this was Tom Cruise's idea, and he was like, John Woo came in, he was like, oh, you know, I'm worried I'm not going to be able to live up to Brian De Palma kind of thing. And he was like, I don't care if you don't watch the first one. I want this to be a John Woo film. And so he's like, he wanted every director to come in and be like, make a Brian De Palma film, but it's a Mission Impossible film. Make a John Woo film, but it's a Mission Impossible film. Make a J.J. Abrams film. But
do you happen to have a? I can look it up. Do you happen to have a list of other films that De Palma and Woo have done, or do you know them off the top of your head?
Brian De Palma did Scarface, I believe.
Okay.
You look up John Woo, I'll look up Brian De Palma.
I'm already on Brian De Palma.
Oh, well, I'll look up John Woo then.
Okay. Let's have a look at this. Director. Predator? No, that can't be right. Did he do Predator? Oh, right. Oh, he's got so much. Yeah, Scarface. Untouchables.
John Woo did Face Off.
Right. That's right, yeah. Man, De Palma hasn't done a lot of big things since Mission Impossible. It says director on Predator, but it can't be the...
What?
It's not. It's like at the top of his IMDb, not the bottom where it would be if it was... I think this film will be based on the Harvey Weinstein scandal. Okay, that kind of Predator. All right, so he didn't direct Arnold Schwarzenegger's
John
Predator.
McTiernan did, didn't he?
That's so funny. All right, Weinstein crawled his way back into the podcast again.
Yeah. So, yeah, like that's cool. Yeah, that was actually like an intentional thing. So, yeah, also this film features something that I know you're a big fan of, AJ. Do you know what I'm going to say?
Yes.
What is it?
The only time they say the title of the movie in the movie.
And what did you think of it? So, do you want to give us the line?
So, because
I know
you
love doing your Anthony Hopkins impersonation.
Yeah.
Who's in this film, by the way?
We at Cold Pop Show, we call them title bombs. It's when you say the name of the movie in the movie. Done right, it can be really impactful, really beautiful. Done wrong, it can be really cheesy and stand out like a sore thumb. So basically, Anthony Hopkins, who's the new boss of IMF, tells Ethan the mission at hand, and Ethan's like, nah, that's so hard. And Anthony Hopkins' character goes, so you're saying it'll be difficult? And he's like, yeah, extremely. And he goes, well, we don't call it mission difficult, Mr. Hunt. We call it mission impossible. And
he's like, well, it's not mission difficult, it's mission impossible.
Yeah, there's mission impossible. And it's like, it might be the worst title bomb.
Really? I loved it because it's so cheesy.
It is. I mean, it is. Again, it is pretty 2000s. But my hang up with it was like, but it's not. The thing they do, no one calls it Mission Impossible. The closest you could claim is that it's Impossible Mission Force, but they don't call it Mission Impossible. So is Anthony Hopkins breaking the fourth wall? Like, is he making a Bugs Bunny-esque like nod to the like, you know, our world existing and that they're only in a film? Is like it's just like, well, they don't. It's the movie's not called Mission Difficult, Tom Cruise. The movie's called Mission Impossible.
That was the deleted scene.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, that's the second film. Moving on to Mission Impossible 3. This came out in 2005 and was directed by J.J. Abrams. And this was, fun fact, J.J. Abrams' first film.
It was his first film. That's so interesting. Okay, so this movie...
first film as a director. He'd written a few.
Right, yeah, and he directed TV before as well.
Yeah, directed the Lost pilot.
Yeah. So it's a number of years later, and Ethan Hunt is now married to a woman named Julia. Engaged, apologise, they get married in it. And he's called back to IMF. He's since the second film.
Well, he's retired as a field agent.
Right, he's called back to help, is it to extract another agent from, they've been caught?
Yeah, he's been compromised. Oh, yeah, she's been compromised.
And it was one that
he trained.
Yeah, so they go and extract her, and she dies anyway. And basically, they come to learn that there's a possible end of the world weapon called the Rabbit's Foot, and they have to get the Rabbit's Foot off the bad guys or away from the bad guys, and it culminates in Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt's wife Julia being kidnapped by the villain, and he has to go and save her. Beautifully simple story.
It literally is, we need to get them MacGuffin. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah,
because you never find out what it is.
Yeah, and it also, the film stars probably most famously would be Philip Seymour Hoffman as the main villain.
As Owen Davian. I think it's Owen, but yeah, Davian.
Yeah. And
it also stars Tom Cruise, who's pretty famous.
Yeah, that's true. And Michelle Monaghan plays Julia, who's not that famous, but she's famous to me. Michelle Monaghan keep cropping up in my...
I love her, man.
My life, yeah. And it also, as just a fun little side character, has old Simon Pegg shows up for a couple scenes. And he plays the IT guy who sort of tells them that maybe the Rabbit's Foot could end the world, but he doesn't know.
Yeah, he's just
Lawrence
Fishburne. Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne's in it, and also Ving Rhames is back.
Yeah.
He's just like, it could be this thing. It's called a rabbit's foot. I don't know what I'm talking about anyway. No, I guess no. What does he call it? Like a god something.
A god, yeah, something like. I'll look it up.
Yeah, but yeah, fun fact. So this, obviously came out in 2005. So there was a year later than Shaun of the Dead. but 2 years
Anti-God.
before Hot Fuzz. Have you got it?
Anti-God.
Anti-God, yeah.
2 years before Hot Fuzz, and that's crazy because when I thought of where Mission Impossible 3 came out and where I was in my life, I could have sworn...
I said 2006. It was 1 year before Hot Fuzz. And,
right.
Yeah.
I could have sworn it came out post Hot Fuzz. I thought that was the whole point of having Simon Pegg show up, was it's like, hey, it's the guy from Hot Fuzz. I know Shaun of the Dead probably made him, put him on the map as well, but it was a bit of a surprise.
So I apologise. It came out in 2006, not 2005. I had my notes wrong. But yeah, so 2 years after Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, 1 year before Hot Fuzz. But after Shaun of the Dead came out, a reporter was interviewing Simon Pegg and was like, "Oh, so Shaun of the Dead did pretty well. You're going to pursue a career in Hollywood now?" And his response was, "I mean, it's not like I'm going to be asked to be in Mission Impossible 3."
And is that why he was asked to be in it?
I don't know, because it was like, yeah, J.J. Abrams, was a fan of Simon Pegg. They knew each other. And he was like, yeah, can you just come do this little role? And then it ended up, he's like the second lead of the franchise by part 5. And
something happened to Chris Pratt with Jurassic World as well.
Well, yeah, there's just like 10 years before he was cast, or like not 10 years, but like quite a few years beforehand, there's like a video of him doing like a behind the scenes tour of Parks and Rec, and he's like, and he's like, saying what he's texting. He's like, sorry, Spielberg, can't talk now, Jurassic Park 4. Anyway, it's just like a dumb joke because that's like Jurassic Park 4, that'll never happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So once again, this is the most 2006 film I've ever seen.
Oh.
Like, it's fine in this case because 2006, a lot of good stuff came out as opposed to 2000 where everything was cheesy. And J.J. Abrams, perfect. Like, there are so many moments in Mission Impossible 3 that feel like an episode of Lost. I know J.J. Abrams had very little to do with Lost past the pilot, but it's still like Michael Giacchino, how do you say his name? Giacchino?
Oh, yeah. I've actually never said his name out loud or heard it said out loud.
Yeah. So he does the soundtrack for the film, and there's a part in it where Ethan is once again going rogue, and he escapes the IMF, and as he does, the music starts playing, and it's like, it feels like the lead up to a big reveal in a Lost episode. Like, it has the exact same style to it. And then when this is a smaller Lost-ish thing I noticed, was that when he's running through the IMF to escape, he's like holding down the call button on the walkie-talkie so that they can't figure out where he is. And they can't intercept it, and then he leaves it next to a radio which is playing "We Are Family," and like, how Lost is that? Like, remember in Lost when you'd hear like play your own kind of music, sing your own, and it like paired like crazy situations with like a really like folksy kind of like homely song. Like,
there's a lot of good stuff like that. And also the credits thank the Hanzo Foundation.
Yeah,
another wee Losty thing for you. But yeah, so J.J. Abrams directed this. It was his first feature film. However, he wasn't the original director. Joe Carnahan was attached for a long time, and it sounded like it kind of didn't end well for him. But because he's when Fantastic Four, the 2015 one, Fant Four Stick, tanked, he was like, fuck, I'm glad Twitter wasn't around when I was on Mission Impossible 3, because I would have pulled a bloody trank and made a fucking ass of myself. Because you know what Josh Trank did, where it was like, when Fantastic Four, the day Fantastic Four came out, he was like, a year ago I had a really good version of this and you'll never see it.
Right.
And it's like,
not a good move, not a good career move.
Yeah, but he Joe Carnahan, it seems like, because he was attached to it for like 16 months or something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, and then after that, they replaced him with David Fincher.
Oh, what? That would have messed up the flow. That would have been insane.
And when he was attached, Sylvester Stallone was going to play the villain.
That's bizarre. I can't imagine what conversations would have led Fincher to be hired for it. Like, really? That breaks the theory, because Fincher's quite a timeless director. I mean, I say that's not like this movie's dated or anything, but like, I guess we would have had something a bit more akin to like Gone Girl or Girl with Dragon Tattoo.
Nah, you think of like Fight Club. Well, let's see what Fincher was doing in like 2006. That would have been around.
Even Fight Club, yeah, it's got action, but the story couldn't be further away from what Mission Impossible stories.
So this was a year before Zodiac and a few years after Panic Room. So yeah, no, I mean, I think Fincher could have made a great film, and I think especially with I think Sylvester Stallone would have done it. I mean, obviously we'll talk about it in a sec, but Philip Seymour Hoffman is absolutely incredible. But I think Sylvester Stallone probably could have actually done a really good job. There's like what I thought was a huge spoiler for the film, and is actually the opening sequence when Philip Seymour Hoffman has Tom Cruise's wife at gunpoint in front of him, and he's tied up, and he's like, I'm going to count to 10 and then I'm going to kill her unless you tell me where the rabbit's foot is. And he's like, I don't know where it is. I thought I gave it to you, but was that not it? And then it ends with him shooting the wife. But I think so. I can imagine Sylvester Stallone doing that. Like that really subdued but really sadistic scene.
Yeah, I would say Philip Seymour Hoffman's probably the most effective villain in the whole series. Maybe that's just because he's Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, totally.
Just the characterization for him is really cool. Like, I mean, especially coming from the last two films, like John Voight will never not play a villain. And like then the Wolverine dude from Mission Impossible 2, he is just, they didn't really try very hard with him.
Yeah, he's like he's the Wolverine dude in the same way that Eric Stoltz is the Marty McFly guy.
Yeah. And then you get Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's like this Stephen Wright-esque terrorist, and it's really, really cool. So yeah, I thought he was great. The only thing I didn't like is he kind of gets killed pretty easily, all things considered.
Yeah, they're having a scuffle and they're kind of rolling around on top of each other, and then Tom Cruise is on the bottom, Philip Seymour Hoffman's on the top, and a car like drives over them so that it hits Philip Seymour Hoffman in the face, but drives over Ethan. But one thing that I feel like you would have appreciated, because this is the kind of nuance that you love, but we haven't even spoken about this yet, but in all of the Mission Impossible films, they use masks where they put on like a rubber mask of someone, and then they assume that person's identity, and every time they do it, it's that actor, starts playing that character kind of thing. So Tom Cruise puts on a Philip Seymour Hoffman mask, and from that point on, it's played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. But fuck, he did an incredible job of playing Tom Cruise. Did you think that?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, yeah. I didn't think of it at the time, but now that I'm thinking about it,
watch it again, because it's like you forget that it is just Philip Seymour Hoffman playing Tom Cruise with a Philip Seymour Hoffman mask on, because he's like he has to get, because he makes him read out this poem to like download his voice. Yeah. And the poem as well was like specifically written for the film, and it contains like every single sound, like every single phonetic sound, but yeah, and then he has to like go from one end of the theater to the other, like climbing up the rafters, and he's all agile, but he's like kind of fat. And then he's like even after the jig is up, he's just like sitting there, and he's like got his Tom Cruise smile, and it's like he's so good.
That's great. I thought what you were gonna say was that for me the masks and the second one felt very get out of jail free. It felt very Deus Ex Machina. So you can basically...
The masks is one of my talking points for afterwards. Once we've discussed every single film and we can now be spoiler free, I want to talk to you about the masks. Because I know you didn't like them to begin with.
We'll talk about them later. Yeah, that's fine.
So this also came out around the time of... do you remember the Trapped in the Closet episode of South Park?
Yep.
Yeah, so with Tom Cruise, and it's Scientology, and it implies he's gay as well. But Tom Cruise like threatened to pull out of doing publicity for this film if they didn't pull the episode. And
why would South Park care?
Well, because is Comedy Central like owned by Paramount or anything like that? Like, I'm sure there are. No,
they're owned by. They might. No, it is Paramount. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
you're right.
So
yeah.
We probably should fact check that, but let's just say it is.
You want to know why I'm thinking it is?
Why?
It's because I'm pretty sure the mountain, the Paramount Mountain logo in the South Park movie, it stays on the Paramount logo, then fades into a mountain in South Park. That's what I'm thinking of.
Nice. Maybe.
I think I could be making that up, though. They haven't sold like Indiana Jones and stuff as well, so...
It's owned by Viacom.
Well, they don't exist anymore, do they? Oh, no, they're the ones competing with Disney to buy. Is that Viacom? What a great conversation to listen to.
So Viacom, one of the divisions of Viacom was Paramount.
Right, there you go. So that makes sense. All right. Interesting.
Yeah, so anyway, and they Comedy Central pulled the episode, and Matt Stone and Parker, the creators of South Park, said they weren't allowed to, they had to pull it and they weren't allowed to talk about it.
Well, how did we then see it?
Who bloody knows, mate?
That's really interesting because I guess until I feel like Tom Cruise wasn't known. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like he wasn't known as the Scientologist guy until after Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah. So this probably would have been the first post couch jump, like Mission Impossible, I think.
Post couch jump.
Yeah, you know that when Tom Cruise went on Oprah and like jumped on his couch, I was like, I love Katie Holmes.
Post couch jump, post 9/11. Like this film embodies that time period. They all do, and this one does as well. And I think this is the hardest one to talk about why it does that. I think this film is more indicative of the tropes used in stories at the time than it is of where the world was at. Like, right. Especially with the Abrams-esque MacGuffin. So Abrams has a TED Talk where he talks about a magic box, a mystery box.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it in ages, but if I'm going to understand correctly, what he's basically saying in it is like, the mystery is more interesting than the answer.
Yeah, he bought this mystery box from like a magic shop, and he's never looked inside it because not knowing is more interesting than whatever is inside.
Yeah, and that's the rabbit's foot. Whatever you think the rabbit's foot is more interesting. And I mean, that's Lost as well. That's like so much of what Abrams has done is he's often criticized these days for it as well. But like because
like he did that with The Force Awakens, and then Ryan Johnson came in and proved that the mystery in all cases was more interesting.
Yeah. I thought Mission Impossible 3, when I saw it, I was like, this is undeniably the best one so far.
Yeah, man.
And how crazy is that, man? How crazy is that your third... Name another trilogy where the third one's the best one.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I was about to bring up how on the Freddy vs. Jason episode, we're talking about how the sixth one is definitely the best one, and you were like, name another franchise that you can say the sixth one is the best one.
Yeah, and you probably could with Mission Impossible.
Yeah, in fact,
what did this one get on Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah, so this one got 70%.
That's still pretty low. That's pretty low by today's standards.
But yeah, a couple of little tidbits about this film. One thing we didn't mention is that, as a couple of New Zealanders, did you appreciate at the start of the film where they're like, "Oh, hun, what was the name of that lake that we did the thing over?" And he was, "Oh, Lake Wanaka."
I didn't notice it at the start. I noticed it at the end when he calls her up and to prove that it's actually her he's talking to.
Yeah, he's like, what's the name of the lake? It's like Wanaka. And it's like,
yeah.
That's in the South Island.
Yeah. That's in the least talked about part of New Zealand.
Yeah. But Tom Cruise went there while filming The Last Samurai and loved it, and so he put it in the film.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's cool that it's like, because at the start I was like, oh, it's like a little Wanaka. Yeah, that's where my aunt lives. But then... it actually ends up being like real important to the film.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and also another little fun little cameo in this film. Do you remember?
Tell me.
Michelle Monaghan's little brother is Aaron Paul.
Yes, and they would later play a couple in that AMC series.
Oh yeah, you're right.
What's that called?
Not AMC, Amazon, isn't it? The Path.
I'll look it up. The Path. Yeah.
Pretty sure it's Amazon. It's a streaming service.
Yeah.
That's funny, yeah. I didn't pick up on that, actually. But
that's the first thing I thought was like, they are later banging each other in The Path.
All right.
Where do you look on IMDb to find out what production company made The Path, also known as The Way?
Hulu. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we sorted that out.
Great.
All right. Next up, 5 years later, 2011, we have Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, man.
What's this one about?
This one is about so there's so much, and you got to rework, because one thing, my mum watched some of these with me, and she was like, "Do you write notes or anything?" And I was like, "Oh, not really." And she was like, "How do you remember which one's which?" And I was like, "I don't know. He's got different haircuts, so I can tell you his haircut in Ghost Protocol."
His hair's like, I think Rogue Nation throws it off, but it's like his hair goes like short, long, and then short.
Yeah. So Ghost Protocol, basically, they on a mission to what are they trying to get from the Kremlin?
Launch
it
codes?
doesn't matter. Launch code. Yeah, nuclear launch codes. They basically flub a mission, and the Kremlin, which is a big,
it's like the Russian CIA.
Yeah. It gets blown up, and because it's such a big deal,
it's not because they flubbed it. There was another team there doing something.
Yeah, the entire IMF is disavowed by the government, and they enact something called Ghost Protocol, which basically means the IMF doesn't exist, never existed, and we aren't going to cover any of our agents. So now everyone's a rogue agent, and this isn't the one called Rogue Nation. And so basically, it's Tom Cruise and his friends getting the job done. Basically, they've got to go and get these Russian nuclear codes.
Yeah, and so where does it take them?
It takes them to Dubai, where he climbs up the big building. This is the one
Khalifa.
where he climbed the big building in Dubai.
Yeah, the Mia Khalifa.
The Mia Khalifa. And I don't know where else they go by name. I could describe the countries. They go to a sandy place. They go to a...
That's Dubai.
Yeah, where else do they go? This is funny, because I'm struggling to remember, but this is probably my favourite one.
It's real fucking good, eh?
Yeah, it's so good, man. I loved it.
So basically, most of the film's in Dubai, but the sort of doomsday event of the film is that a nuclear missile is launching to the United States, and it's actually, it's headed right for Pixar Studios, because it's directed by Brad Bird.
Of course, directed by Brad Bird. And when did it come out?
And this was his first live-action film. Continuing directors being allowed to do their firsts. But yeah, they were impressed with his work on The Incredibles, and they were like, yeah, let's get him to do a Mission Impossible film.
Totally, man. And like, again, such a 2011 film, right? Like, this is what so many films looked like when it came out, and it's like the best of all of them. But yeah, I thought this was such a good movie, man. I was a little weary at the start, because I thought Simon Pegg being upgraded to the main cast was vaguely annoying at the start. I was like, he's kind of just being the not as good agent, kind of making quirky lines. But you know where it won me over?
Where? Was
when he gets his mission statement after he's escaped from being in a Russian jail for like however long, and he gets his mission statement on a payphone, and as it ends, as usual, as what is always said after he gets his mission statements, it goes, this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds, and he hangs up and he walks away, and you're like, fuck yeah, Mission Impossible. And then it doesn't blow up, and he looks back at it, and it's like, what's going on? Then he walks back and like punches it. But I was like, yes, give me meta, num num num. because in the 4th entry in a franchise, you've established it, you've repeated it again. Number 4 is the sweet spot for when you start making fun of the sacred cows.
Yeah, man.
So I was like, it's got me. It's totally got me. The other thing I really liked was the climax of this film takes place in a car manufacturing...
An automatic parking garage.
Yeah, is that what it is? Right.
It's one where you like drive your car in, and it's on like a bunch of like turntables and like all these other things. So like lift your car and put it in a spot. So then you can come back later and be like, oh, my car, like enter in your code and it'll grab your car
like
off
a
there
vending
and
machine.
lower it down and put it to you.
And it's just such an inspired choice. Like, for where can we set our final battle? It's like, yes, set it in such a, like, it's so designed. So this movie, this should be a bad thing, but it's not. This movie is designed around its set pieces. So every moment is like, all right, where does Ethan go next? You know, and they contrive the plot to get him there, which I would have said is a bad thing, but it's not in this, because this movie... If you buy into the basic premise of Mission Impossible as a concept being it's impossible missions, like these aren't your run-of-the-mill...
These aren't just mission difficult.
These aren't just mission difficult. They're like, and I think Fallout is better if you think of it in this way as well, is like, these are actually the missions deemed for this agency that specifies in doing the impossible. And so in that sense, then I like that they go to such conveniently theatrical places to do these parts. And like, you know, so like he's trying to get the suitcase off the villain, and like the platform holding the car rises up and he has to jump on it, and then there's a countdown where he has to push a button within that suitcase that'll stop this missile from blowing up all of the Western Hemisphere, basically. And when he does it, like, and so they've got like 10 seconds left or something like that. And what's longer than it's a couple minutes, and the bad guy's like, nah, and he just falls off the car park platform and to seemingly to his death, so that Ethan won't be able to get there in time. So what does he do? He gets in one of the cars and drives it off the platform, and car head first, just crashes like 20 feet to the ground. And I was like, this is action, the genre, man. Like, this is what
like,
it's
because
about.
he's got like an airbag kind of thing.
Yeah, he puts his seatbelt on.
Yeah, it is like I actually read a thread on Reddit, because each time I watch one of these movies, go through and try and get talking points and stuff like that, and someone's like, the climax was like real shit because it was just product placement. Because like, did anyone else feel like it was just showing off how good the BMW safety features are?
That's amazing. That's so fun. I don't care.
But like, it kind of is. But it's like, these movies, they do a lot of bad things that should be held against them, but they're great. And like they said, it's based around their set pieces, but they actually do have good stories that go between them. These aren't like turn your brain off and just have a bit of fun movies. They are actually good movies that just happen to be like these, big achievements.
They function both ways.
This franchise is like the perfect argument for like film. You can have both. Like films can be really good and still at a huge blockbuster.
Yeah. Ghost Protocol is the first post PS3 Mission Impossible, and that shows, because this felt like an Uncharted game. Specifically Uncharted. I don't play a lot of video games, but I've played Uncharted, where you have like the big set piece followed by like a really dramatic debrief between the characters, then move on to the next set piece. Like you're going all over the world. He has to climb up the Mia Khalifa, whatever you called it. I know who Mia Khalifa is. I'm not
the Burj Khalifa.
The Burj Khalifa, he has to climb up it, and it's so funny because it's like, and you get this especially in the last 3 films, where it's like, right, what situation do we have to contrive, and they are contrived, but that's what's fun about them, so that Tom Cruise has to climb up a building,
and so there is a real divide in the franchise of like the first 3 are like just solid passable action films, and then this is the, did you know Tom Cruise actually did this?
Yeah. And so he climbs up that building with this thing, and then they have like a real tense like trade with the villains where they're pretending to be other people.
Oh, and fuck, that's a good scene.
Yeah, and then all these big action stuff is happening. What the bit that blew me away in this film, and it's so dumb because it's just plot, and it shouldn't. Oh, it's story more than plot, but it affected me so much. So basically, by setting up that Ethan's now married in Mission Impossible 3, I think the writers felt they had kind of a problem on their hands for continuing the series because they now have to account for that. He has a wife, Yeah. And so you learn at the start of Mission Impossible 4, Ghost Protocol, that they broke up. And I was like, that's kind of cheap. Like, how do we hit the reset button? Oh, they broke up. It's like she's kind of the whole point of the third movie is that he's trying to save her. And I hated that. I hate in Kick-Ass 2 how the girlfriend from the first film just breaks up with him right at the start and it's like treated as a joke. And I was like, what? She was like the entire she was the motivation. Yeah, not really. But and so
women aren't objects.
Yeah, so the during the movie, Jeremy Renner's character joins in, and he's an analyst who works for IMF, and he sort of goes rogue with them because he's pulled into it, at least because he wants to. Basically, after one of the big action set pieces, Ethan gets real mad at Jeremy Renner's character. I'm forgetting everyone's names, and I'm annoyed because
Jeremy Renner's character is called Brandt.
William Brandt. And
because there's when their mission goes wrong, Ethan and Brandt kick ass together, and then he's like, "How the fuck did you learn to do that?"
Yeah, and so he's like, "Oh, we all have secrets," and then Ethan leaves, and the remaining characters there are like, "So what actually is going on here, man? Like, how do you do all this? You're clearly not meant for analyzing stuff for the analyst field. You're clearly a field agent." And he tells the story about how he was him and some others were the guardians for this couple who used to be involved with the IMF, and they were guarding them on a holiday they went on where they had to stay out of sight, so they couldn't meet the couple. And he goes, and I was in charge of looking after the husband. And then one morning he goes for a run, and I follow him. And when I come back, the two other guys who are supposed to look after his wife, they're knocked out, and she's been killed. And they found her body, a couple days later in the river. And they're like, all right, so what is, why did you jump on helping us here? And he's like, well, oh no, they say, what happened? What happened to the husband? And they're like, he's like, well, I never saw him again until 3 days ago when the secretary introduced me to Ethan Hunt. And I was like, oh, fuck. It was so good, dude.
Yeah, man.
I got shivers.
Yeah,
I was like,
fuck yeah, man. I'm so glad you
what a good... This is storytelling, man. This is complex storytelling in quote-unquote dumb action films. Like, that's Brad Bird, man. That's Brad Bird coming through there. Because this is the most story-ish of all of them, I think.
I'm so glad you said that, because this actually... they barely had a script when they started shooting. They shot... So, when they... after, their first part of the mission, they're in the van, kind of... They're like, we've been disavowed as everyone in this. They shot that scene without knowing anything that happened before it.
What on earth? That's not how you make a movie.
Yeah, I've made a short film like that before, and it's not fun.
That's so funny, man. So man, Ghost Protocol is just so good.
Yeah, and also Ving Rhames. This is the only one. He's in it. He has a cameo at the end, but he's barely in it. And that was because of budget cuts. They slashed the budget, and they could no longer afford to have Ving Rhames in the film.
Because that's the other thing that's kind of the anomaly of Ghost Protocol, is that it's probably my favorite Mission Impossible film, but it doesn't have a particularly engaging villain, and it doesn't have Ving Rhames, and he goes rogue for the third time. So those things should be real. Like, this you've taken out the best parts and just recycling old material. But it is, and it's a good name. It's a good title. Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, that's the thing, and we'll talk about titles later, obviously. But actually, we'll just talk about titles later. But yeah, another thing, just final thing about Ghost Protocol is that Ruben Fleischer was approached to direct at one point, who's doing Venom now, obviously.
He did Zombieland as well.
Yeah, Zombieland was his other film. So it would have been post-Zombieland, because that was 2009, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so that would have been like his next film. But then he couldn't do it, or for whatever reason, so they were like, "Oh, Simon, why don't you ask your mate Edgar Wright?" And he was going to do it, but had to pull out because he was doing post on Scott Pilgrim.
I don't know. I think Brad Bird's the correct choice for this film.
Yeah, it's a perfect mix of like cartoony and kind of
Yeah, man.
Yeah. There's the other scene that was real fucking cool was when they're in the Kremlin and they put up this big like silver screen and you're like, what are they doing? And then they like take a picture and they like analyze the guy's
Good luck
eyes.
Explaining how this works on a podcast.
If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just real fucking cool. And the fact that there's like almost no audio in that scene.
It's a really good scene. That's the thing. And I think that's why Ghost Protocol stood out for me, especially in the like, shall we say, the second trilogy. Why I think it's probably the best of the last three is because it feels like someone who's real stoked to get a Mission Impossible movie under their belt, and so they're doing their very best, and they know. Like, so if you don't know, Brad Bird directed The Incredibles, Ratatouille. So these are movies where. If you talk about them as adults, you know, obviously as kids, you're like, oh, they're great. But as adults, we talk about Pixar movies about their story and how well their structure is. And so action movies, typically, if we were to generalize, we'd say action movies are quite light on story, usually. Just because they don't need to be. Blur, you didn't come here for complex story, you came here for cars exploding. And that's true, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but as we said before, Mission Impossible are proof that when you do both, they're amazing. They're great. And so, you've put that guy who's in charge of, who's known for real good stories and real good dynamics between characters, and you put him behind the realm of action movie, and you say, hey, direct Mission Impossible 4, which shouldn't be good. And I'm sure we'll get to this later. I'm gonna drop this bomb now. Mission Impossible is a perfect franchise. Like, this is a podcast about franchises. When we sometimes touch on this, that like, if we were to write a thesis based off everything we've learned on this podcast, it would be around like, what is a franchise? What are they supposed to do? That kind of stuff. And along with Scream and a few others, I think that are like essential to understanding what a franchise is. I think this is a really interesting look at like a pure trajectory of 1 to 6 as we have so far, because you can say like, oh, well, you're not even saying they get better if they go along, if Ghost Protocol's the best one, but if your fourth one can be the best one, like that's still pretty good. And like you are the way I see it is like a scale. If you've got 6 and the best one's in the second half, and the other two aren't bad, that's good. That's good stuff, man. That's
interesting. And you know, you could potentially be jumping the gun by saying that the fourth one is so definitively the best one. But we'll put a bow on the fourth one. And Adrian, I'm going to ask you: have you been listening to any podcasts lately?
I have been, actually. I've been listening to our one. I re-listened to it.
Anyway, moving on. No, you go on.
Oh, do you want me? Okay, this is the plug. So we've been plugging a couple of other podcasts recently, just to, you know, get each other's audiences, tap into those precious audiences from similar podcasts. So this week we're going to plug one called The Book Guys, and or Book Guys Show. If you type in The Book Guys into your podcast finder, you'll find it. And it's a podcast where they review books. I listened to an episode before, and as someone who doesn't read books, I was like, I should read more books. These people are smart as hell, man. It's so like classy and cultured, and so here's the trailer now. We'll listen to that now.
Hi, this is Colin Ferguson. I play Sheriff Jack Carter on Eureka.
Hi, this is Bernard Robichaud. I play Cyrus on the Trailer Park Boys.
Hey there, it's Adam Curry from the No Agenda Show.
Hi, this is Jeremy Bullock, Boba Fett from the first Star Wars trilogy.
This is Father Robert Fallows here.
Hello, this is Brian Brushwood, host of Scam School, and I dreamed the dream of the perfect book show. When I woke up,
It was the Book Guys. And you're listening to The Book Guys.
Book guys.
Book guys. The book guys.
You're listening to the Book Guys.
The Book Guys Show, where we talk about books, audiobooks, audio dramas, podcasts, film and television, you name it. We're about more than just books. Search for Book Guys Show today in your favorite podcast app.
Hey, Paul.
Wait, who said that?
This is Orson Scott Card. I thought I was the book guy. Now I find out you're the book guy. What am I? Oh, I guess I'm just the author of Ender's Game. Okay.
Cool. So that was Book Guys. I listened to an episode before where they interviewed a guy who does audiobooks, like a big audiobook voiceover tycoon.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, this is something we would do. We would find a guy who does heaps of voiceovers for audiobooks and interview him. So that was really cool. So go check out those guys. Really good stuff. Really smart, engaging stuff. So yeah, definitely check them out.
Nice. And it was a good trailer as well.
It was a good trailer.
So you should check them out just for that. Tell them Cult Pop should sent you. All right. So next, in 2015, we had Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. So what's this one about?
This one is about, there's essentially, to summarize it in a sentence, there's an anti-IMF called the Syndicate that want to wreak havoc in the world.
Yeah, so it's made up of like bad agents.
Yeah.
From all, intelligence agencies from all around the world, and yeah, basically, that's the
Who directed this one?
This was Chris McQuarrie.
Chris McQuarrie. What has he done? Anything else?
He did the Jack Reacher films. He wrote Edge of Tomorrow. Him and including Fallout, because he directed that as well. He has done 9 films with Tom Cruise in the last 11 years.
Wow. So, going by our theme that we kind of set up of how each film is indicative of its time period, this is a great example of something real inspiring a movie. There's a great Cracked podcast I listened to once. One of the first podcasts I ever listened to on clone movie syndrome, like when two very similar movies come out at the same time. And they talked about Armageddon and Deep Impact coming out at the same time, or roughly the same time. Both are about meteors. And they said, well, 8 years before that, before both these movies came out, there was a meteor scare. And so, that enters the public consciousness, stuff turns over in Hollywood, and eventually 8 years later, they push out a movie about that thing that people were talking about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I believe this is the first post-missing airplane movie in the Mission Impossible series.
Yeah, because he mentions MH370 in the film.
Yeah, so this very much ties into stuff like that. It ties into panic more than the others. It's about panic, and 2015, you could say, was a very panicked time. If we had got a Mission Impossible in like 2002, 2003, it would have been so 9/11-y. Like we've missed it. We've missed it, and so we've missed this like super culturally thick time where you could go, that's a post 9/11 film, and this still is, but this is more post 9/11 than the other films.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way to put it. Also, I think I forgot to say it for Ghost Protocol, but this film has 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is actually the same as Ghost Protocol.
Very interesting. By no means did I think this was a bad film. I would say this is the closest I came to being disappointed, if only because I really enjoyed Ghost Protocol, and this one, it was like, okay, the best scene's probably the first scene at the start, which is
that's all over the posters and the trailers of Tom Cruise hanging onto the outside of a plane, and
which
that's the first scene if you haven't seen this film.
Yeah,
and he actually did it. So he was strapped onto the plane, obviously, but yeah, and at some points the plane got up to 5,000 feet with him on the outside of it.
Frick, man.
Yeah, but
maybe Tom Cruise just does the stuff because he's like, I want to do that.
Yeah, no, that's actually, he's like, oh, we should do this, and then, but yeah, I think it took like 10 days to film, and they did the like eight flights. But
right. I thought you meant the whole film for a second. I was like, what?
Yeah, so I'm talking on Graham Norton about doing this stunt, and it's because he said like it just as the plane, so he's holding onto the plane, and as it was like taxiing, and there was a lot of wind, he was like, and that was like one of the only was like, fuck, this is a real bad idea. And before he'd even lifted off, that was like, he was like, oh, okay. And then he's like holding onto the plane, and he said, he got, when he's up there, like, I mean, imagine if like a bird had like gotten in, but he said like a pebble hit him in the ribs, and he said it was like insane. He thought he'd like cracked a rib and stuff like that. But it was pretty minimal damage, but it's like at that speed and that altitude. But yeah, imagine if that like had hit his face, and they would have like just shut down the film for ages. But yeah, he said that was actually pretty terrifying. And the other big stunt in this film is the big underwater scene, where he's like goes and dives, and to do this scene, he had to train himself to be able to hold his breath for 6 minutes.
Are you serious? Why, man?
Yeah.
I was watching that scene, and in the movie they say 3 minutes. You have to hold your breath for 3 minutes, and I was like, "Oh, I'd be out.
Yeah.
I'm out. Goodbye, guys.
yeah,
I
so
can
see,
barely
'cause
muster a minute."
They did like 4-minute takes, but once you go underwater, you have to wait for all the bubbles to clear, and then you have to do it, and then you have to like. So there's all this other stuff that adds like an extra minute or so. But he learned to hold it for like 6 minutes. He was talking to like Jude Law was there, and he had done an underwater scene for like 90 seconds or something like that. But Tom was like, it was actually like, it's terrifying. He said like it's actually it becomes physically really painful, and he said that's like he wouldn't do that again. Like that's one of those like it's real.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he would do it again if he had to. But
again, the scene doesn't look that real.
you reckon?
I mean, I could believe that could be CGI. Like, obviously, not everything that's happening in the scene where he goes underwater is real, because he gets knocked by a big mechanical arm and swung around a giant room. I'm assuming that was, set up so he wasn't actually unexpectedly knocked or something like that.
Maybe,
You're about to tell me he was. It's like, well, AJ, he actually did it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any like behind the scenes footage and stuff like that, but yeah, he held his breath for 6 minutes, which is fucking insane.
I didn't even think that was possible.
No, there's like free divers that can hold it for a real long time. And should we check the world record?
Yep. Checking the world record. Checking the world record. Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth?
Okay, do you want to guess the world record?
10 minutes.
22 minutes and 22 seconds.
Nuts. How can you do that?
But yeah, basically you like you have to like slow your heart rate, and so your body's using less oxygen and stuff like that. But fuck, 22 minutes. Imagine that. Holding putting on an episode of The Simpsons, and then as the credits roll
That's how they practiced.
Yeah, so and also there's a big guy like stunt driving as well, like driving through Monaco. It's Monaco, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Simon Pegg and Tom Cruise in the car, and they did all their own driving stunts. And apparently the stunt team told Simon Pegg, they're like, yeah, Tom's going to do all the driving because he's literally the best driver we have.
Oh, man.
Like the team of specially trained stunt drivers don't have a better stunt driver than Tom Cruise.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess if I was to try and pinpoint what let me down about this film, I would say that, again, the best scenes at the start, but also like, I think that might actually just be it, is that the main set pieces aren't spaced throughout the movie enough. So you get left with like, oh, okay.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, like I fucking loved this film, man.
Oh no, I did too, and I feel like I've come in on the wrong
like
head on. Like,
yeah, this is like the chase scenes are amazing. The scene that's like above the opera is so good. They're like having this big fight above the opera. It's real similar to, there's a similar scene in Quantum of Solace actually, but it's the way it's tied to the music and the fights are going.
You're right. Yeah, no, it is good.
It's just a real cool film. But what you were saying about twin movies before, I thought you were going to say, is that this film came out in 2015, and then a year later, about 18 months later, or a year later, Rogue One came out, And apparently, Disney and Paramount actually came to an agreement that Disney wouldn't promote Rogue One until Rogue Nation was out of cinemas.
I've never even thought about those two films together before.
Really?
Yeah, that's
But yeah, no,
crazy.
it's interesting because it's like it's not beneficial to either studio to have people confused, to have the audience be like, what Rogue, and like, yeah.
This Rogue Nation did come out the same year as Spectre, though, the James Bond film, and they are pretty similar stories as well. So
Yeah, but what do you imagine that 2 spy films in the same year? Isn't that crazy?
yeah, true.
But did you know that 2015 actually saw the release of Rogue Nation, Spy, Kingsman, Sicario, Spectre, Black Mass, Survivor, Queen of the Desert, Bridge of Spies, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., MI5, and Mordecai, which all have spies.
And none of them were a match for Mordecai.
Yeah, that was my big finale. But yeah, there's a film called MI5 that came out the same year as MI5, Mission Impossible 5.
Was it made by Asylum?
It stars Kit Harington, and the poster is real similar, and it looks real bad because Kit Harington's in it, and anyone from Game of Thrones is a terrible actor outside of Game of Thrones. Anyway,
do you know the guy the like head producer of Asylum Films?
Yeah,
who's like he if you don't know what Asylum Films is, they make like transmorphers and snakes on a train and Sharknado. They made Sharknado.
Did they actually? Because it was sci-fi.
They did. No, they made Sharknado.
Well, I'm
anyway,
pretty sure it's sci-fi.
Maybe it's both. I don't know. Anyway, he's following us on Instagram. He's
really?
one message away from like an interview for this podcast, but I've never seen any of his films.
Yeah, dude, it's
and
sci-fi.
I really don't want to watch them. Well, he's following us, and it says Asylum on his Instagram, and he also has all this stuff about friggin' Sharknado. So I don't know. It's his fault, not mine. Anyway.
Oh wait,
What
no,
are we talking about?
no, you're right. It was produced by Sci-Fi and distributed by the Asylum.
I'm holding my hands up in victory, everybody.
We were able to both be right.
Corroborate my victory, Richard.
No, it was a shared victory.
All right.
Yeah. So, talking of, we've said this for the other films. Directors, Brad Bird was going to direct, but he did Tomorrowland instead. And Chris McQuarrie was brought in at Tom's request.
So, at what point did Tom Cruise stop being like, get a different director for each one?
Well, maybe Ghost Protocol was just so fucking good that they were like, yeah, let's get Brad back.
Yeah.
But also, this is the first time that there's no jump and hang in a film.
That's true, yeah. So, the jump and hang, as we said in the first one, where he like is an inch above the ground. In the second one, he does it from a helicopter into a building. Same sort of scenario. My favorite one was the third one was the like subversion of it, where he falls out of a building with a torn parachute, and he's falling towards the ground, and it catches on something, and he's hanging like a couple inches above the ground by accident. I was like, there you go. There's the obligatory hang.
Jump
What was
and
it in Protocol?
And Ghost Protocol, Jeremy Renner's character does it with the magnets.
Yeah, okay. I really want to talk about that scene, but I forgot to talk about it when we were talking about Ghost Protocol.
This podcast's going to be fucking long. What's the point? May as well be a little bit longer.
Yeah. So basically, the situation is that Brant has to jump into a computer, a giant computer, and the only reason he knows he's not going to splatter into the fan is because he's wearing a magnet suit that Simon Pegg's character Benji is controlling remotely that'll like allow him to hang and like move at like anti-gravity. And they're like, all right, jump, Brent. And he's like, you just want me to jump? And I've never related to a scene more in my life than looking at a drop and thinking, they just want me to jump. I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, I was like, what a good scene that is. Like, he like hypes himself up, and he like, instead of jumping, he sort of just like falls off. I would do that, Richard. I would get on my belly and just pull myself off. I wouldn't
pull yourself
jump.
off.
I would be
It's
too
hardly the
scared.
time for that, AJ.
Yeah. It's so funny, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So, also another, like, just my last little fun fact. At the start of this film,
At the start of Rogue Nation.
Yeah. I've got two fun facts, actually. At the start of this film, he gets the mission, should you choose to accept it, this will self-destruct. It's on an LP at a vinyl record shop. Apparently, that's like one of the first ways they did it on the TV show.
Oh, cool.
And also, this is the first and I think maybe only time, definitely the first time, that Ethan and the antagonist never come in physical contact.
Who's the... Lane. They don't meet each other.
No, they don't physically touch.
Oh, they do. They don't touch, right. Interesting. Cool. Lane's a good villain. I liked him. Sean, what's his name? Sean
Harris.
Yeah, he does a really good job. Is he in anything else?
He's mostly known from TV, and apparently he was reluctant to take the role in the film because he was like, oh, I don't know. But then the scene that convinced him to do it, that was like this big discussion, was actually cut from the film. So...
no, he's mainly got a creepy accent, and that adds to it.
Yeah, apparently Benedict Cumberbatch was looked at one point.
Oh, yeah.
He was the first person considered. Anyway, next. And also that film introduced Rebecca Ferguson, and the reason that the woman in the team from Ghost Protocol didn't return was because they were unavailable. She was unavailable. So
okay, it felt vaguely sexist.
Yeah, it's just like, get another girl in, they won't notice.
Yeah. Well, and it's just not like she's playing the same character, but at the end of Ghost Protocol makes a point out of being like, this is the new team. It's Jeremy Renner, it's Simon Pegg, it's Ving Rhames, it's Tom Cruise, and this other actress. And then she's
Paula
the only
Patton
one.
is in name. Yeah, all right. So now...
am I sexist for not knowing her name?
From this point on, there will be spoilers for a film that is currently in cinemas, so we'll put a time code in. Maybe
it's at 1:34, so you can listen to an entire episode's worth of the podcast before getting to the spoiler.
Yeah, man. All right, so 2018 saw our second franchise in a row to feature in a film that came out this year. Mission Impossible: Fallout.
The first was Pup Star, by the way.
We've got something very special. AJ, I didn't tell you about this in advance, but we've actually got Tom Cruise here to tell us the plot of the film. Tom, take it away.
Wow, I'm very honored to be here, guys. I'm a big fan of the show, and I'm really glad that you saw my new movie. So basically, Mission Impossible: Fallout, where I return as Ethan Hunt of the IMF Impossible Mission Force. I've forgotten what this movie is about because I'm so concentrating on doing this voice right.
Wait, what do you mean doing this voice?
I'll tell you when you're older.
Wait, are you?
I'm your dad.
Are you not Tom Cruise?
No, I'm your dad.
Oh, that is really uncool.
Wow.
That's
that's a reference and a half. That might be the most niche, immediately need to be explained reference we've ever done on this show.
Is that like, once I said it, your screen froze, so you didn't react at all, and then I heard you be like, oh, that's a reference, and I realized that it had frozen because I thought you just didn't get it.
Are you going to explain this, or am I? Who's going to make up for your reference, Richard?
Hey,
who's going to do the answering for this?
That presented itself perfectly.
Yeah.
In New Zealand, there's a broadcaster who's been on the air for a long time, named Simon Barnett, and he's a huge, huge Tom Cruise fan. When Tom Cruise was in the country filming Fallout, he was like... we should try to get into a Tom Cruise. Wouldn't they be able to try to get into a Tom Cruise? And then one day he finally managed to land an interview with what he thought was Tom Cruise, but it was actually a professional Tom Cruise impersonator, which was set up by another group of broadcasters called JJ, Mike, and Dom. And just fun fact for the listeners out there who aren't aware of this, JJ and Dom are two of the literally worst people on the planet. Like, honestly, I after this whole thing, and it's not just related to that because I don't really particularly care about Simon Barnett that much, but I was like, you know what? To compare JJ and Dom to cancer is an insult to cancer, because at least cancer is furthering cancer research. But anyway, and then when they were like, oh, it's not actually Tom Cruise, we just pranked you, he was just like, oh, That is really uncool. Oh. And then it was like one of the girls in the studio was like crying.
Yeah. Look, it's a horrible time, and something very similar happened on this podcast a long time ago. But no, basically, yeah. I don't know what's an international Simon Barnett equivalent.
He's like Ant and Dec, kind of.
Who's that?
The British guys.
So he's fine. His nephew actually used to be part of the Cole Popture family.
Yeah.
Joe, who you may remember from some of our episodes last year, is actually Simon Barnett's nephew. No, he's like, my mum listens to their radio station.
Yeah, no, yeah. He's the one that your mum listens to. Not just you, but he's the one that your mum listens to.
He's the most inoffensive dude. Like, just your typical TV radio personality, and the radio station that pranked him are like the radio station that all the drunk teenagers listen to. Like, you know, like,
yeah.
It was like, imagine if you pranked your dad. That's what it was like. Like, and it was just really hard to listen to and really sad. Like, it wasn't funny.
That's the thing. It's like the podcast we did. It's not funny. It's real sad.
Yeah.
But anyway, after that as well, because Tom Cruise was actually in the country, and everyone's, we should try and get like Tom Cruise to actually do an interview with him, or like make, you know these fucking things come up, something bad happens to someone, and they're like the shooting at the Dark Knight Rises. Everyone's like, Christian Bale should visit them, and it's like, he's under no obligation to do that. You're just like. But he did anyway. But they're like, Tom Cruise should actually do an interview, and Tom Cruise's people released a statement, being like, no, he's not going to.
Yeah, I guess like the gravitas difference between a mass shooting and a radio host getting pranked is a bit of a smaller margin.
Yeah.
Like,
I only bring that up because there is like this tendency to be like, a celebrity should do this, and it's like, like now they have to, but like. You're under no obligation because people signed a petition on your behalf. No one has to do anything.
I doubt Tom Cruise even heard about it, man.
Well,
Who's going to tell Tom Cruise that?
In quotation marks, Tom Cruise officially responded to it by saying he's not going to do an interview, but it was like his people. So obviously someone actually contacted him for an interview.
Unless, the whole scary don't talk to Tom Cruise thing came over and he'll never do it.
It was just like he's just not doing any press when he's in New Zealand, which is fair enough. He did come to Auckland though, and I work for the news, and we got a shot of him going to visit the Scientology Centre in Auckland, but we won't talk about that. What
a thing to have him do. Oh, that sucks. That's when you're reminded that this like lovable action star is like the face of one of the worst organizations in modern society.
But so anyway, Ethan Hunt's going on a mission. Basically, it's the villain from the last one's still alive. He's got these apostles, which are like the rogue agents from the syndicate and shit like that. But so Ethan Hunt's from the IMF, but he's forced to bring along Agent August Walker from the CIA, who's played by Henry Cavill, with sporting a moustache, which we'll talk about in a second. And so basically, they've got two different approaches to their work. And at one point, Angela Bassett, who plays the head of the CIA, refers to it as like, Ethan Hunt's a scalpel, I prefer a hammer. And I thought that was a real good line, because it like perfectly describes that, like, Ethan Hunt, even though he does go, haywire at some point, it's always about like undetected and very precision, whereas Henry Cavill's approach is more like just punch everything. It's revealed that Henry Cavill's a double agent, and all this stuff. And you've got the big set pieces, and there's like a big helicopter chase and a bunch of other stuff. But I want to talk for a bit about the marketing for this film, because for me, I was like this. The first trailer for this film, I was like, "This is so good! I have to see this film." So I was going to do it outside of Film Franchise Fortnights, and then if we get it for Film Franchise Fortnights in 2 weeks, I'd just have to watch it again. But having seen the movie now, it's a real weird trailer.
Well, I don't remember it, but tell me about it.
So it starts off and it goes, "Confront the victor." No, I'm not going to just say the whole trailer. That's not even how it starts, actually. It starts with Sean Harris going, "Your mission, should you choose to accept it. I wonder, Hunt, did you ever not accept it?" So it opens with a scene in the snow where, like, there's barbed wire with blood dripping from it, and Ethan Hunt's, like, walking up to a door with his gun, and he, like, slowly opens it. That scene's not in the film. And then it cuts to, like, we see this rave, and, like, that's in the film, and then there's, like, Ethan's, like, swinging from cables on top of the rave. That's not in the film either. And then the end of it is, like, he's in a helicopter driving towards a truck that's oncoming, and that's, like, the big finale shot of the trailer. That's not in the film, but it's, like, it's edited to look like he's in a truck driving towards another truck, but if you look closely, he's clearly in a helicopter. You see it 2 shots beforehand, and in that shot in the film, he's in the helicopter with another helicopter rolling towards him.
Well, and another thing as well is that Walker being revealed as the villain.
Yeah, that's the other big thing.
Quite late in the film.
Yeah, that's like.
And I knew going into this that Henry Cavill plays the villain in Mission Impossible 6.
Yeah, and so
that's a spoiler. Like,
yeah, the trailer is pretty, like, it sets, like, oh, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, and then yeah, it's real weird because it's almost like the trailer says Henry Cavill's the villain, but then the first third of the movie goes out of its way to show you that the trailer misled you.
Yeah, it could have very easily been they set aside their differences and learn to work together. Like, that could have easily been the arc of the film.
Well, like, I don't know if they, like, specifically made this for people who watch the trailer a bunch of times, kind of thing. But there's a lot of shots in the trailer that, like, when you see how they are in the actual film, you're like, oh, he wasn't talking about that, or he wasn't doing this, or like the big bathroom fight scene in the trailer, it looks like Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise are fighting each other, but they're actually fighting a third party. I was like, oh. And so, like, part of me in the back of my head was like, oh, maybe the trailers were specifically edited to make Henry Cavill look like a villain when he's actually not. But then he is.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. It is really weird.
That being said, this is, if not the best, the second best movie.
Yeah, fuck, it's so good.
It's so good, man.
Yeah. So
oh my gosh.
This has 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's the highest rated one of the series.
Wow. The 6th film.
Yeah.
Even, like, critically the 6th one is the highest.
Also,
that might be the only time this has ever happened.
Do you want to, so, like, mostly all positive reviews, but do you want to read one of the only negative reviews for this film? It says,
yeah.
This is from Ruben Safire from Cinema Log. The film holds up well as an action piece, but the intrigue dissolves when we step outside the theatre and read about the clandestine way 12 Russian military intelligence officers were caught in the act interfering with the 2016 US elections. So they gave it a rotten review because of that. That should be removed. Like, that's not a review. That's like, he says, it's a good movie, but the real world is bad. Bah, 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 bah.
Yeah.
That's not how you review films.
Yeah. And again, bringing back to what we're talking about, how every film is indicative of its time, I was worried going into this because I was like, this theory is such a cool idea. It's really cool to think of one single franchise being the poster child for all these different eras of like time. And while Fallout is 100% the only true sequel in the Mission Impossible series, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
This is the quantum of solace to Rogue Nation's Casino Royale, not in terms of quality, in terms of how it plays off it. But this is, ladies and gentlemen, the first post-Trump Mission Impossible film. And if I were to be teaching a university class on this, and if I were to be grasping at whatever straws I could to do a political reading of this film, the thing that struck to like about like all of it to me was that if you were to pitch Rogue Nation as it's the anti-IMF. You would pitch Fallout as it's the anti-Ethan Hunt, and because that's what August Walker's character is that he's the opposite of Ethan in so many ways. And so what I read, if we're doing a political reading into this film, what I read into it was these are, undefined but still warring ideologies. And if there's one thing I'm sick of doing in my social groups these days, it's having warring ideologies with our very divided thinking and all over the world now. Because one, as you say, is a scalpel, one's a hammer. And maybe that's not a perfect metaphor for the right versus the left, but it's still like, it's less about which is which and more about when two very different ways of thinking go at it. Try do the same job. So there's my finish of the theory that they're all indicative of their time period.
Nice. Well, that was good closure. Yeah, they. This franchise better than I do, but part of it's like might be true, and I want to get your thoughts on it. But did you say like this was kind of what happens if Mission Impossible teams up with James Bond?
Yeah, that's totally a way of looking at it. I don't know. Yeah, I guess James Bond is more hammer than scalpel, but not... James Bond's a lot more complex.
Yeah, it varies from movie to movie as well, and actor to actor as well. But
this what Mission Impossible feels like as the series as it is now is James Bond if there were no studio mandated rules hanging over it.
Right.
This feels a lot more free. This is the Marvel to James Bond's DC in a lot of ways. This feels like people who know what they're doing. And I like James Bond, and it's got so many films on Mission Impossible that it's like you could talk about the different eras of James Bond compared to it. But especially after Spectre, which I found very disappointing, these films are more hands off the steering wheel, let's see what happens, than James Bond, especially Spectre, which felt very safe, and these films don't feel safe.
But also Jeremy Renner doesn't return for this one.
Yes, yeah.
Which was interesting because it's like he could have easily just slotted into it, but he was busy with Avengers.
Right.
Which he wasn't in.
Do you know what, though, is that I kind of like the idea of not having the same... Like, if we get 7, 8, 9, however many more Mission Impossible films, I kind of don't want Simon Pegg to be in all of them. I kind of want to think of the different phases of it, and, these were the 3 or 4 films that Simon Pegg was in. Like Rogue Nation is the most Simon Peggiest of them all. Like, he's the second main character in Rogue Nation.
Yeah, actually, a thing I forgot to mention in Rogue Nation, because, like, in Mission Impossible 3, he's just like the IT guy, and then between 3 and 4, he's done like field training, but Ethan still kind of treats him like the IT guy. But there's like a moment in Rogue Nation where he's like, I'm actually a field agent, you have to respect me.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
Yeah.
But then it's like...
It is cool.
Yeah, like he's just not as good as Ethan. But
you can't help but think that had Simon Pegg not played Benji in Mission Impossible 3, it would have just been a completely new character. You know?
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's not even really a bad thing necessarily. But yeah, I kind of my worry going into Fallout was like these movies are so great because they all came out at least 4 years after each other.
I think 4 years.
4 years is the most it had been.
4 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years.
3 years is a lot less time to be able to for Hollywood to change, which is kind of what I love about the Mission Impossible
series.
But then
Hollywood has gone through a massive change.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Interestingly, it doesn't really reflect any of that kind of Hollywood changing stuff. But
but then because you think filming started so early,
exactly.
And then was shut down for a while.
Yeah. But this is very much... This movie makes... This feels like the completion of Rogue Nation. And this feels like a sequel, and so it is a sequel, and it needed to come out this close to Mission Impossible 5 because they're doing something different now, where it's not like this is the third part of a trilogy. This is the second part of 2 films, and I don't know if the 7th one will continue on, but it does make sense then to have the same narrative voice behind 5 and 6 because it feels like the same story.
It's funny you say that because the only reason Chris McQuarrie like agreed to do it was he was like, I feel like a different director now.
There you go, man.
Having done it, and because Tom was like, no, I want you back for it, and apparently, they were like driving back from the premiere or something like that, and Chris was like, I've got a good idea for the next one, and then Tom Cruise was like, I have to break Lane out of prison because they need him for something, and he was like, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, and then so cool. Like they came up with it together, but yeah, Tom was like, no, I want you to do the next one, which is cool, but yeah. A lot of good stuff in this movie. This has some real good set pieces, and this film has 3,000 setups, 13 helicopters, 6 pregnancies, 5 hiatuses, 4 weeks of aerial photography, 3 continents, 2 winters, and 1 broken ankle.
Wow.
Just that was on the IMDb trivia. I thought it was cool. But yeah, the broken ankle. So there's a shot in this film where there's a whole sequence of Tom's like running through over rooftops of London, and it's a fucking great scene.
Yeah.
And then he jumps over one building and hits his ankle because he like doesn't quite make the jump. But like that was always the stunt, was him to like jump and then grab onto the other side and then get up and keep running. But his ankle like bends backwards, and they use the shot in the film because they couldn't get another take of it. And then he gets up and starts running away, but it's on a broken foot, and you can tell. But that shut down production for like 6 weeks, I think. And they I saw an interview with Henry Cavill. He was talking about that, like he broke his ankle, and they were like, you're not going to be able to walk on this for 6 months, and you might never be able to run again.
Tom Cruise is like, no!
And then 6 weeks later, he was running on it.
All I am is running.
Yeah. Like, did you see you should look it up if you want, and this for the audience as well, look it up. But someone did an analysis of how far Tom Cruise runs at his movies is like directly correlates to how good the movie is.
And I agree.
Yeah, no,
he runs
totally
so much in Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, and in Fallout.
Yeah. So the end of Fallout is so awesome. It's like it's saving. It's like the rest of the movie has awesome moments in it, but it's like it's saving it for that helicopter sequence to be like the, all right, boys, what's on the menu today kind of thing. And it is so intense. And we talked before about how IMF is for impossible missions. You watch this and you're like, yeah, this is impossible. This whole thing is impossible, and that's what's wonderful about it. And like he crashes a helicopter into another helicopter and survives, and then they fall off and they're stuck in a helicopter as it's like falling down a cliff face. And
in
then
Queenstown, New Zealand.
Yeah, and the kind of last moment of the film is both Ethan and August like climbing up this rock face as the rope they're hanging to is slowly dragging across the rock and crumbling, and Walker's like got half his face is burned off, and it's like, oh, you are the villain. you have ascended to like true villainy right now just because he looks worse, I guess.
Because he's now like they've made Superman Two-Face.
Yeah. And they climb up, and then he grabs onto the wall to free climb because he's Tom Cruise, and he yanks the hook and it flies down. And if you watch that in slow motion, man, I'm pretty sure the hook like gouges Henry Cavill's eye.
It goes into his forehead and like pulls it back.
And it's such a clinically
cathartic.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's like, remember when bad guys used to be hated, and remember when bad guys used to die like this. You know?
Yeah.
Like we there's nothing wrong with sort of complex and sympathetic villains, but I do miss the old, this guy's just evil and he hates you. He hates you, the main character. Like, you know, like there's a hatred, and that final scene where they're fighting and they're punching each other on the cliff face before they fall off, I was like, this is charged. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
this is like fueled by not only testosterone, by not only the fact that we're watching an action movie, but these two characters, they don't share a lot emotionally between each other, but just where they stand on the chessboard that is intelligence, right? Like they are opposing forces, and baby, they're gonna fight to the death here. They are broken and battered and bruised. They just both survived a helicopter crash, individual helicopter crashes, and now they're gonna fight because it's fucking Tom Cruise and Henry Cavill, man. It's so awesome.
And can we just like give a shout out to Henry Cavill reloading his arms? Oh my god! And the trailer, that's so fucking cool. Yeah. It's so stupid, but he like, I mean, just go watch the trailer. Yeah. He like reloads his arms, and it's fucking incredible. And there's like I saw a clip of like they're interviewing the cast, and they're like talked about, and the whole cast like, do it, Henry, do it, Henry, do it, Henry.
That's awesome.
But yeah, speaking of Henry Cavill as well, he obviously has a moustache in this film, and they, Paramount just like swung their massive dick and ruined another film because of it. But yeah, basically it was in his contract that he was forbidden to shave his beard. He's got like stubble but a defined moustache for the role, and they received a phone call from the Justice League producer during production and were like, hey, we're going to get him back for Superman. And then co-producer of Mission Impossible was like, okay, Cavill could shave his beard, and we'll shut down production while he does his reshoots, and then Warner Brothers can pay $3 million for additional visual effects on shots of Cavill after completing his Superman reshoots. Unfortunately, Paramount found out that they were trying to do this and like, nah, he can't shave his beard. You can fucking have him with a mustache.
It's so weird. It's like they went, like Justice League went with the worst way to remedy this problem.
Yeah, they're like, all right,
CGI-ing
let's get a baby and superimpose that on Henry Cavill.
Because like if he had just grown the rest of his beard out, I could have accepted Superman with a scraggly beard. You know,
yeah.
But hey, the mustache looks great, and I reckon the only reason he has a mustache is that he stands out, like iconically. Like he's not just another thick-necked white brunette dude who's going head to head with Tom Cruise. He's like, he looks specific. You could describe this person.
He's a pretty good villain, actually. But he also utters the franchise's only F-bomb.
And how good is it?
Yeah,
so good.
It's good because it's like he's just angry. It's just real angry.
Yeah. What does he say? He's like, why'd you have to make this so fucking complicated? And it's the reveal that he's the villain. Okay, let me slowly pick at a thread here. Do you think that it's kind of lame that, because I feel like it's cool to have him be the CIA's hammer, and then you learn that's not actually what he is. He's actually a double agent who's an anarchist who wants to disrupt the New World Order. If I was to critique this movie on anything, I would say it's very hard to believe that a white American man would be an anarchist. Like it's not your typical, like if when he was revealed to be the villain, he changed accents or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you know what my issue with this film was? So the kind of doomsday event in this film is that there's two nuclear bombs that have like, if you defuse one, it'll detonate the other one, and it's accurate to within like 1/10 of a second. So you couldn't be like 3, 2, 1, cut. And then also there's like the detonator. So there's like all these things they have to like do all these things at like certain times. But I was like, why don't you just have a device that, or like make up a device that's like two wire cutters that are connected to one like button, and it will snip both at the same time within 1/100th of a second.
I don't know, man. It is kind of risky, isn't it?
Yeah, but like that to me feels like that's just how you do it.
By the time they work out that's what they need to do, they're already without.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to build it. But yeah, I was like, that's how you do it. So that's our film by film discussion, but now I still have more I want to talk about.
Could I lead the charge on something?
Yes.
Can we talk about titles?
Yes, we talk about titles a lot on this podcast.
Because I want to start at Fallout. Because I've got the quote here, the full quote when the title bomb drops.
Yeah.
Because before the movie, it's very nuclear apocalypse based. So you go, okay, Fallout, because it's nuclear fallout. But when they capture Lane, and some of this is in the trailer, I guess, but I just thought this was actually quite a beautiful line and a really good title bomb and a really emotional thing to call your movie, I guess. So the full line is when they've caught Lane and he's talking to Ethan and he says, "Your mission, should you choose to accept it. I wonder, did you ever choose not to? The end you always feared is coming and the blood will be on your hands. The fallout of all your good intentions." That's really good, dude. That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea for a title. It's a really good idea to base your emotional thread around, like, because it's very the culmination of everything, you know. Because, by the way, Ethan's wife isn't dead. I didn't mention when we talked like an hour ago about how she died. She's not actually dead. She was in hiding.
Yeah, and basically, it's like either you're going to have to keep going away and saving the world, or the world isn't going to get saved because you're with me. So we shouldn't be together.
Yeah. So I mean, putting that in mind, you know, everything that Ethan's been through, and he doesn't quite have as much tragedy as James Bond, whose wife actually betrayed him, then died. Like, it's still, I really dig seeing a culmination of a character arc in that way. Like, this is what you've all been through, and then this piece of shit is like looking at you in the eyes, and he says, you know, the world's going to end, and it's going to be because of you, and it'll be the fallout of all your good intentions. Everything you tried to do, it didn't work, man, because the world's going to end anyway. And it's like, that's what Spectre tried to do, kind of. But this is, I just really like that. So that was where I wanted to start talking about titles.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it might have been nice to start at the start, but
well, it was more coming off Fallout. I wanted to attach that to the end.
But yeah, so the titles do something interesting, and you've talked about this before, is that it uses numerals, and actually fun fact, officially it's Mission: Impossible, Mission: Impossible, the numeral 2, and then Mission: Impossible I.
Yeah.
So they use different numberings.
Yeah.
And then also, because there's already a colon in the title, they can't use a colon for the subtitle, so it's Mission: Impossible - Ghost Protocol, and they use that for Rogue Nation and Fallout.
So until I watched this series, I would have said Mission Impossible have perfect titles. Perfect. The only thing that I could really fault it on initially was like the initial Mission Impossible isn't like amazing of a, you know, it's fine. It's whatever. It's kind of clunky, but whatever. But I love going from numerics to, like, once you get 4, don't keep putting numbers in your title. It's tedious. Like, it's going to get confusing. I think that's probably the marketing reason why they decided to start calling them something. But be whatever reason, they still keep to their patterns. You can change your pattern if you keep to your pattern. For late, you know, so like 1, 2, 3, Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Fallout. Like, cool, these are good titles. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 though, because I didn't realize till just today when I was photoshopping the thumbnail for this episode that it is the number 2 and then Roman numerals 3, which kind of is like, you're so close. But I would have preferred if they had stuck with whatever numerals they wanted to do.
Yeah, and also, like, we briefly touched on this, but like, Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Fallout, they're all just cool words.
Yeah,
like,
they are.
You don't have to know what Ghost Protocol means. It's just a cool sounding word.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention this, Ghost Protocol and the TV series How I Met Your Mother, which I know you're not a big fan of, and I'm no longer a big fan of. But there's an episode when they talk about this girl who has like an amazing bod, and Ted is talking to Barney, and he's like, dude, I'm telling you, this girl's body is redonkulous. And he's like, wait a minute, Ted. The only thing you've ever described as redonkulous was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. and they're like, and he's like, this girl has the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol of bodies. And they're like, oh my god.
That's pretty funny.
It's funny. It's like one of those things of like people talking like real people.
They could wreck it in the next one by calling it Mission Impossible 7.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only teetering block we're on now.
The leading creative voice behind these films, and you'll be so pleased to know this, Tom Cruise actually cares about titles as much as we do. He was so glad, like he really pushed for it, and he was so stoked that they started calling them Ghost Protocol. Like they started doing the subtitles. He pushed for that, and he wanted to change it because he wants them to feel like installments, you know?
Yeah.
So each one of the series. So in honor of Tom Cruise, who we've been here talking for over 2 hours about, let's go back and rename the first 3 films.
Okay, I was thinking of this, and I feel like there's an obvious answer.
Yeah.
But
would you give one for the first one? Or, cause
No.
Just call it Mission Impossible. But say if you have to give it a subtitle, what would you call it?
I don't know, man.
I can't even remember the...
I don't think you need to. The knock list is the...
Yeah, the knock...
So
yeah.
knock
So the
list.
second one, what would you call it?
Chimera.
Yeah, Mission Impossible Chimera, and the third
Which
one...
also means 2, so it's cool that you're doing like a kind of... it's the second one and it's called Chimera. And the third one, I guess, would be called Rabbit's Foot, but that sticks out from the rest of them as being particularly theatrical. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm all good with it being 1, 2, 3 and then changing, though.
Yeah, but... yeah, like Rabbit's Foot is the obvious title for the third one, which is kind of... Yeah, it's just like a little bit weird. But, alright, so that's titles.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you've got anything else to say.
I just want to say, like, for people who don't get me when I talk about titles, because it's literally a weekly segment or a fortnightly segment we do on the show, and I've had people before who don't get it. Like, next to the Look Who's Talking trilogy, like the Mission Impossible titles are like I want to eat them. They're delicious. They're cool and they stick to their pattern. And as you say, it feels like installments. It feels like we're watching the next thing. And numbers are lame. Numbers are lame, especially after 3. 4's the worst number.
Yeah. And like, because Friday the 13th almost did that. If Friday the 13th had ended at the 4th one, which was just the final chapter, that would have been fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we talked about the mask. In every film, someone wears a rubber mask and assumes someone else's identity. Now, because how did you feel about it after watching 2 films? You weren't a huge fan.
So the first one, it's pretty understated. I imagine, I would need to confirm this, I'd imagine it's a holdover from the TV show.
Yeah, it is.
So in the first one, it feels more like an homage to that. And then the second one is like, right, how can we build a whole film around it? And it just... I feel like I don't have a substantial argument for it because it's set up and everything, but it just feels kind of cheap to keep... Like, the second one, I feel like the second one's the one that relies on it as it being a plot device the most. The other ones, it's not real. I don't think there's ever another climax that is revealed to be it's someone wearing a mask.
6 uses it twice.
Yeah, but it's not the climax of the film.
Well, yeah, it's not the climax of the film, but there are 2 very definitive
and
twists.
I liked them. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, fuck, they were so cool, man. Like, so, yeah, because in the 6th one, they're like, okay, Benji's going to pretend to be Lane, and we're going to go do all this other stuff. Henry Cavill, you stay here with Lane, and then Henry goes and he, reveals his evil, and he goes and talks to Lane, and he's like, "Oh, you're so fucking blah, blah, blah."
Complicated.
And he talks to him. And earlier on in the film, Angela Bassett's like, "Oh, the IMF is nothing. It's Halloween. It's people playing in masks." And then Henry Cavill's like talking to Lane about how they work together and they had a deal, and he's like, "Oh, she was right. The IMF is nothing but children playing in." And then he rips his face off, and Simon Pegg's like, "It was me the whole time." And it's so good.
It is good. What do you agree that it's? What's the second one in 6? I don't know.
The first one is at the start when you think they've failed or the world's been bombed. But
yes, yeah.
That was a good scene as well.
Would you agree that it's lame in the second one, or do you think it's cool all the way around?
I don't remember it standing out enough in the second one as being good or bad, to be honest.
Because I'm not sure how I can articulate this.
I think it's great, like in the third one. Like the ones I remember it when it's good. I haven't remembered the bad ones as much.
Yeah, because the inherent problem with it is it's basically a get out of jail free card. You can do whatever you want. It's hey, you thought this character was dead? Psych! And that is going to get repetitive and that's going to get lame. And so the second one, the way Ethan escapes is by putting on the mask of a henchman, and then the bad guy kills the henchman, and then he notices he's got a cut on a plaster on his finger, a band-aid on his finger, which he had put there earlier in the film, and he's like, oh shit, it's the guy, and then you see him running off and he rips his mask off. And it was at that point where I was like, it's so... You know what it is? You know what the difference... Okay, so if the first one is just an homage, and the second one is like building the whole movie around it to the point where nothing really matters because anyone can be anyone, the third one fucking explains it. The third one, you have an in-depth sequence of how they make the mask, how they make the voice patch that changes your voice. And when I saw that, I was like, this feels like J.J. Abrams. It feels like his one problem with the previous movies was it's so unrealistic. So he puts a scene devoted to it. And it doesn't shy away. Like, they're putting Philip Seymour Hoffman's face on Ethan's face. And as he's pushing it, the camera moves behind Ving Rhames. And you think it's going to, like, as it comes out, it's going to just be Philip Seymour Hoffman there. It's not. It's still Tom Cruise wearing a mask, and they apply it and put the makeup on to make it look natural and blend in front of your eyes, and you go, okay, I can believe this now.
Yeah.
That's why it works, and that's a separate problem from it being a Deus Ex Machina, but it at least makes it more believable, and so you're kind of intrigued by it and you want to see it happen.
Also, it's interesting to note that in your favorite film, they don't actually use masks in the reality of the film. There's like I should say dream sequence, but it's like okay, what if, like in heist films, how they go, all right, so you do this, and then it's acted out. They use a mask in one of those, but not in the actual film. There is a disguise, but it's just Tom Cruise.
Isn't it funny how good the IMF are at making masks that look exactly like real people, but then when they have to do disguises, it's clearly a disguise. Yeah. Like, it's clearly like wigs and like fake moustaches and things like that. I was like, just use the mask every time.
I guess it's different when you know what Tom Cruise looks like underneath all that. And so you can tell, true. Whereas like if you just saw that walking down the street, you probably wouldn't notice. But speaking of Tom Cruise, I want to talk about him a little bit. Like, what do you think of Tom Cruise generally?
I don't like him. I hate him. I think he's a bad person. I think he's a creepy person. I think in almost every other role where he's supposed to be likable, you see through his glazed, doll-like eyes and his off-center smile, and you're like, you're not a real person, you're a product that's selling itself. And so, like, The Mummy's real bad with that. And I can't remember where I heard this. I read it somewhere. There's basically an idea being floated out there, if you'll notice, post Mission Impossible 2, so it was the last one where people really saw Tom Cruise as like just a normal actor. Post then, any romance is either it doesn't focus on the tension or the romantic tension between the characters or anything. So like he's already engaged and gets married in the third film. Then the second film doesn't really have a love interest because he's already still like kind of indebted to his previous wife. And then the fifth film, he meets Rebecca Ferguson's character, but they just could have a friendship, like that's why I
really like their relationship.
Yeah, it's like a friendship, and that's sort of carried over into
it's like mutual respect with a sprinkling of attraction.
Yeah, and in The Mummy, 2017's The Mummy, the main girl in that, they reference her character and Tom Cruise's character having slept together, but you never see it, and you never see an indication of that. And the idea basically is that audiences don't like seeing Tom Cruise flirt with people anymore. He's not sexy. He's cool, but he's not sexy.
Well, he is 56.
Yeah.
But, okay, well, that's interesting that you say that. I fucking love Tom Cruise. It's like a fascination.
He's a paradox, man.
He's such, he's a bona fide movie star. That's inarguable. I think he seems like a real cool dude to hang out with. Like, I would love to meet Tom Cruise. You watch an interview with him, and he's like so friendly, and like everyone says he's like the nicest guy. Simon Pegg says he's the nicest guy he's ever met, and Simon Pegg is one of the nicest guys I've ever met because I've met Simon Pegg. But Yeah, and like we just watch him in interviews, and he cares so much as well. Like, and you can tell with these movies, you watch him in interviews, you like he read all the behind the scenes stories, and like even just watching all the stunts he does, like he cares so insanely much. Like the fact that he'll strip himself to the side of a plane just because he thinks this will be good to watch. I should do this, and it's like the only other person that's really kind of like that is The Rock, but like whereas
Tom Cruise is 20 years on The Rock.
Yeah, and also like so when like the Mummy does bad, what does Tom Cruise do? He like gets up and tries again with like something like Fallout, whereas The Rock fucking starts a flame war on Twitter with people. But whereas Tom Cruise is an adult and can like move on, whereas The Rock is just
worm
like
has turned on Dwayne Johnson. He used to love that guy.
Yeah, but then I just hate his little like how personally he takes when people don't like his films.
Yeah.
And how much he like has to shove in people's face that like Baywatch is a real good movie and critics hate it but always just love it. It's like, no, that's just a fucking boring movie, and that's like the worst thing a movie should be is boring.
So it's interesting that you should talk about how much you love Tom Cruise, Richard, because I actually have him here right now. He's on the phone. Hey there, Richard. How's it going?
Oh my god, hi Tom Cruise. That's so exciting.
Do you have any questions you want to ask me?
I would love to know what's been your favourite stunt you've done?
The hanging from the plane was really great, but I just wanted to let you know that you actually have your friend AJ to thank for me being here.
Oh, thanks, AJ.
Psych! Got ya! Pranked ya! That was actually a professional Tom Cruise impersonator.
Oh. That is really uncool. Oh, Jess is crying for me. Good on you, Jess.
we gotta like if you haven't heard this, you gotta look up. We'll try. Maybe I can put it at the end of the episode. Like it's just such a the that is so uncool is like an iconic piece of dialogue that is stuck with me. It's the true sound of someone's heart being broken.
It's New Zealand's "You Bow to No One," even though it's from a New Zealand film. I don't know.
We've lost it again, but this time
for some reason that was the first movie quote that came to mind.
Yeah,
not one
the,
from
like,
Mission
Luke,
Impossible.
I am your father, not the like. No, you know what it is. You know what it is. It's New Zealand's answer to "Forget it, Jake." It's Chinatown. Like, forget it, Jake.
It's New
so
Zealand's
uncool.
the scene where Tom Cruise hangs from the ceiling in the first Mission Impossible. Yeah. Tom Cruise. I don't know enough about Scientology to hate it as much as other people do as well, I think, as part of it. Like, I don't... I'm not,
it's pretty bad, man.
Like, the thing is, I'm not just forgetting about his Scientology or, like, I don't condone it or anything like that. I just don't know anything about it. I know it's weird, culty religion, and that's all I know about it.
You should watch Going Clear, the HBO documentary. It's not just weird and culty. They're like a leech on society, and they've physically attacked people, probably murdered people. Like, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, but haven't we all? Anyway.
And they love attacking people who disparage their name, so expect Cult Popture to be taken off SoundCloud immediately because of this.
Well, and also I've heard apparently that they because Elizabeth Moss is also a Scientologist. And apparently the Church of Scientology has they want to steer away from Tom Cruise being their kind of like poster child and steer more towards Elizabeth Moss.
Maybe that means he can stop being a Scientologist because they've clearly got shit on him, man. The HBO documentary suggests that they have dirt on people like John Travolta and Tom Cruise. Actually, no, they more suggest Tom Cruise is just evil. but whatever. It is always disappointing when you find out certain celebrities are Scientologists, though.
Yeah, man.
I think the worst one for me is Beck. I don't even like Beck that much, but it's like, how can such a cool musician, such a cool, grounded musician be a Scientologist?
Yeah, there are a lot of weird ones. Like Anchor's Hyde from that 70s show. He's one. Anchor's, he's one of the Weinstein effect people that's he actually raped people, but he hasn't been taken off his show because he's a Scientologist.
He has now.
Huh? Yeah, he has now, but he took a fucking long time to get taken off.
Cool. Hey, what else have you got to talk about, man? Because this is whew, this is quickly becoming our longest episode to date. It's right on track to beat
Transformers.
Was Transformers our longest?
I'm pretty sure it was, yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay, those are my like three main talking points. Now is time for a segment we like to call Continue the Franchise.
Boy, have you been holding out for this, listener. At nearly 2.5 hours in.
I can't wait for all the people messaging us and be like, I'm not listening to this because it's too fucking long. This was for us. This podcast was for we needed this. This
Do you
is
know
like
how many Earbud films
all
we
the discussions we had to get out.
Do you know how much theory I had to write on my Google Docs about Earbud?
Do you know what? Coming into this, I was worried I didn't have enough information on Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible Earbud.
Is that your Continue the Franchise?
No.
Right, AJ, go for your Continue the Franchise, mate.
Okay. So...
Oh, actually, sorry. So I'll talk about... in terms of like what's planned, there isn't an official Mission Impossible 7, but apparently at the premiere of Fallout, Tom Cruise, after the film, Tom Cruise turned to Chris McQuarrie and was like, yeah, I reckon we could top that.
I didn't really like it, Chris. I did read on Reddit the other day that Chris McQuarrie has said the reception to 6 has been so good that he's cautious to return. And to be honest, my overall Continue the Franchise would be, don't. Like, let it breathe. Give us that time gap again. Let us into that next era of film, and then let like a product of the times director direct that film. I don't know,
because it does feel like this one needed to be so soon after because it is a sequel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so my Continue the Franchise I almost don't want to do yet. I want to do I don't want it to be the next Mission Impossible. But I did think a way to kind of revitalize it, should it ever get stale, is go the Archer route and do like Mission Impossible, but it's set in World War One, and you get Tom Cruise back and he plays Ethan, but it's set in World War One. Because I'd sort of talked before, like as an example, you could set it whatever time period where like spy agencies exist. I talked before about how Mission Impossible feels like James Bond without the rules. And if you'll cast your mind back, you may remember that Tarantino once famously tried to direct Casino Royale, and he was going to do it black and white, set in the 50s, with Pierce Brosnan as Bond. And they didn't do that because they were like, nah, we got to keep it safe. We got to do what, we want to just keep doing genuine Bond movies. And I love Casino Royale, so while that sounds like a fascinating movie, it's not necessarily the best thing we could have got. But I do wonder if Mission Impossible really wants to be if Mission Impossible wants to be the James Bond killer, which maybe it doesn't, who knows, and they either start playing it safe, which they haven't done historically, so I wouldn't think they would, or they do the opposite and they turn it on its head and do an episode set in the 20s or the 40s or the 60s, or like even the future. I don't know. I think that'd be an interesting
well, there is kind of a Mission Impossible in the future. It's called Minority Report.
Yeah.
Because it does actually have almost the same plot as the first Mission Impossible.
True. There you go. So, I don't know. What do you think? I think
it's interesting, yeah. It's like... Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it, but at the same time, I don't necessarily want it to be that,
Yeah.
Also, the other thing I should mention as well, that there was rumors of that Jeremy Renner's character was introduced in the fourth one to take over the franchise. People were talking about that, but I mean, which would make this one of two times that he's brought into a franchise to take it over, and then the original person's just like, no, I want to keep doing it.
Very similar franchises as well. The other one being the Bourne series. But Jeremy Renner makes his name for being the underplayed cast member in different franchises, because you could say the same thing about him. Like, he's one of the only Avengers one of the only original Avengers without a solo movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I just think he's not a leading man, really. I mean, he was good in the Hurt Locker, but anyway, Mike Continue the Franchise. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Apostles are still out there at the end of the 7th film, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably where they're going to go, which kind of disappoints me because Lane's still alive as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know. I'm only disappointed because it implies that they're going to bring him back, and I don't think they should.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of like a real continue the franchise here, going after the Apostles.
Yeah,
I can't think Mission Apostle.
that's what it would be called.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible.
But yeah, I was
Mission
trying to think of like
A-possible.
what the next big stunt could be, and apparently there's talk of shooting something in space.
Yeah, that does feel like you could realistically take this to space.
Yeah, like
Of
but-
any franchise,
Yeah,
this is the one you
Tom
could do
said
that with.
in an interview, he was
Tom?
talking. Huh?
My buddy Tom.
My buddy Tom. He was like, he said, me and Q, which is what he calls Chris McQuarrie, they talked about, it'd be fun to shoot something in space, but it's getting the story reason to get them up there. And he said, because
Yeah, they couldn't go to the moon. Not
yeah,
in
it'd be a
today's-
space station or something like that.
Yeah.
And because he's already done zero G because the Mummy has a zero G sequence. But yeah, I mean, there's like that because he said it could be like doing a jump from space, which is just like a higher version of the Halo jump, high altitude lightning jump they did in Fallout, which Tom Cruise trained for a year for, and they did 108 jumps.
I would say that gravity is almost Mission Impossible in space. There's no like spy asset to it, but she's still like
Against
on an
the odds.
impossible mission, like against the odds, which is essentially what makes up the set pieces of Mission Impossible films. Is that they're against the
Yeah,
odds.
I mean, I'm sure they'll think of some great shit, but yeah, I mean, going after the remaining apostles seems like where the franchise is going to go next. One other thing I did want to say about Tom Cruise. Wait, what was I saying? So he talked about that. He said,
We're a full Avengers movie into this podcast, people.
this
so
is our longest episode
bear
by
with
almost
us.
20 minutes.
No, I feel like most anticipated of 2016 was this long.
Oh,
Or maybe
right. Okay,
most
I was just counting
disappointed
film
of
franchise
20
Fortnights. Let me see.
2016.
Oh, the very first one you did.
No, it would have been the second disappointing, I think. Was very long.
Oh, the one that we recorded at the end of last year.
No, the one I recorded with Rowan and Josh Monson.
Oh, okay. Which
I feel like that one.
wouldn't
you
have
weren't
listened to.
No. What are you looking up?
I'm trying to find our longest episode. It was a full 12 minutes shorter than we've been going at the moment. Fuck, I was going to say something else about Tom Cruise and I didn't write it down. Which just goes to show you, fam, always write down your stuff.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Do we have anything else to say?
I don't know. I think that's it.
I have fan mail. Do you want? No, we were gonna do fan mail this episode, but
The fan mail always ends up taking fucking ages as well.
it's real long, so we're gonna have to leave it another week. I can't fathom someone listening to a 3-hour podcast on Mission Impossible. It would get to 3 hours as well.
Jesus Christ. Alright, should we do franchise really? I'm so excited to do franchise really.
Oh my god. Yep. Do you want me to get the list?
I've got the list up in front of me. Alright, here we go. Random number
Wait, should we
generator.
explain what it is first?
262.
Alright, you explain it, I'll find it.
So this is a segment where we choose our next franchise, which we haven't done in a month. So this will be in 2 weeks' time. We'll have watched all these films and we'll be talking about them. And while Richard's looking that up, I'll also just say that if you like Cult Pop Show, then please find us on Facebook and YouTube and SoundCloud and iTunes and Instagram and Twitter. Follow, subscribe, whatever on all those things. There's also the survey. It's still up. So please go to the survey, link in the description to find that and let us know what you think. Because do you like 2.5 hour long podcasts, for example?
Do you? I remember the thing I was going to say about Tom Cruise.
Oh, God. Really cock teasing that franchise reveal.
It's a good one too.
Good.
On Reddit the other day, because another thing I like about Tom Cruise is he doesn't take himself too seriously. Because he did like Tropic Thunder, which someone like Leonardo DiCaprio would never do a role like that. But that was Tom Cruise's idea. He read the script and was like, it was actually the whole character was his idea. Because Ben Stiller had written the script and he's like, oh, Tom, and Tom asked if he could read over it, and he's like, oh, it needs more pressure on the guys. They need a reason to keep filming, so you need to add the studio in here. And then they wrote the character. He was like, Tom, he was like, Ben, I have to play this guy. He was like, I want to have fat hands and I want to dance. And he just like made this character of Les Grossman. But he doesn't take himself too seriously. Do you know what? It almost made me forget what I was going to say. But someone on Reddit was like, they talk about Tom Cruise and Tropic Thunder. I barely recognize him. Someone was like, to me, this was the point when Tom Cruise was no longer considered box office poison. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You think that so literally look it up. Tom Cruise, between a film, I think it was called Legend, which was the film he did before Top Gun, between that, so that was 1984, between that and The Mummy in 2017, he had a box office hit. Every single film. He hadn't started a bomb until The Mummy. So that's like 30 years, or 33 years, he was box office success. And this guy's like, oh, actually, he was box office poison until 2007 when Tropic Thunder came. No, 2009.
I like how you derailed our flow of the podcast so you could bitch on a Redditor.
No, it's just what the fucking idiot. So I replied and I was like, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, join us next film franchise Fortnights in 2 weeks, where we will be talking about the 3-film franchise. They're animated. AJ, do you want to guess?
Aladdin.
No. 3D animated.
How to Train Your Dragon.
No. Close.
It's close to How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes.
In what sense?
Very close.
Just tell me, what is it?
Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda. What a treat. Those are supposed to be real good.
Yeah, have you not seen any of them?
I've seen the first one. I've
seen the first one as well, yeah.
I've heard fantastic things about the sequels.
All right.
So
here it is. Who knew Mission Impossible would be our longest episode?
we just got to end it, man. We got to just end this episode.
I do want to look up.
No, God. Why? What are you doing?
So, this podcast is now longer than any of the Mission Impossible films.
All right. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much for
listening. We'll see you
listening.
next time.
Bye. Do you know what's funny?
Bye. Are you still going? I'm about to hit stop.
Well, I was just going to say that it's funny that we were like, oh, let's aim to put the the promo in the middle of the episode. And then we got to it and it was like over an hour in and I was like, fuck. And then it's before halfway.
All right. I'm going to hit stop now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Who was it that jacked it up? Because we'll give them $5,000 now.
It's actually my good friends, JJ, Dom, and Randall from The Edge.
Oh, you're joking! You're joking! We could hear them in the background thinking, is this...
Tom, Jesus, Simon, sorry for letting it go on so long, but you sounded so excited and we just didn't know when to jump in.
I've never been more excited until now.
No, Simon,
dirty dogs.
Simon, this is not Tom Cruise. He's an impersonator called Evan Ferranti from America.
You guys,
TomCruise.com is
that's
his
actually
website.
nah.
Oh, you're joking.
You just interviewed a fake Tom Cruise.
Get a life.
Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me? That's just so uncool. Oh, that's super uncool. Well, that'll be in the newspapers. Poor old Sam's crying for me. Good on you, Sam.
Pretty low rent, guys.
Ah, that's really disappointing. That is probably one of the more disappointing, shameful things.
It's actually disgusting.
Wow. Wow, that's really, that's pretty groundbreaking radio right there. Interesting. I don't quite know what to do about that, but
I think we'll just stand down whenever we think about it.
Yeah. Oh, that is truly disappointing because I was so
Put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, I was so stoked, and now this will be my wife. It is, and my kids are texting because they know. Like when you try to meet somebody that's like a hero of yours for whatever reason. Well, Oh, my whole family's texting now.
Yeah.
That's appalling. I'm so
sure
sorry.
some
son.
discussions are going to take place later today. Don't worry about that.
Wow. I'm just my mind is racing there as to what to do about that. And look, you should see the text machine. Thank you very much for all the very nice text. That's the sort of stuff, isn't it, that you go, and that's to me actually what's wrong with the world. Because if people think that's funny, that's actually not even funny. I mean, you'd never do that to somebody if you knew that. Don't worry about it, Sammy. Do you know what I might do? I might play that interview and my reaction like an excited little boy to Tom Cruise's people, and I reckon that might just get a real interview out of it.
Might carry over the line there, mate, I reckon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get on to that.
Have to say, he was a good impersonator, but such is life. This is More FM, and do you know actually, the text machine is just going crazy. I'm also disappointed for our listeners because I've had the last 24 hours truly. I've had so many people stop me. I was at Mitre 10 and they're saying, we can't believe it. I was at the swimming pool yesterday and they said, man, that's so amazing. How cool. We'll be listening. I've had text all morning saying this is going to be cool.
So let's apologise on behalf of The Edge for their poor taste, for fooling all of our listeners, the hundreds of thousands of listeners we have, who were looking forward to that and listened in and were wildly excited about it as we were. So I'm apologising on behalf of The Edge, and I hope The Edge is going to make an apology to everybody as well.
This is More FM. It's look, we're running horribly late, as you might expect. Poor old Sam's in tears here. We've all had a group hug in the studio because much as we tease each other in here, we love each other very much. And so I think why you're upset and why a lot of people are looking at this text machine, the best thing we can do is probably copy and paste. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of texts coming in, and they are very good in that they are so angry and so upset for me, because I think people could see how much it meant to me. But hey, look, that's the way it is. But what we should do is copy and paste and send that to The Edge and say, if that's the kind of stuff you think's fun, and bear in mind, I mean, I know JJ.
Yeah,
I know
same.
Dom.
I was hanging out at the Radio Awards the other night.
Yeah, and we've spoken about this stuff, and obviously we come at radio from different angles, but that's just to me, that's low rent. That's not fun.
It'd be funny if it was just a random interview, but the fact is that this is like your dream. You wanted this for so long.
Yeah.
And I watched your face thinking you were talking to your idol, and for someone just to rip that away for a cheap gag to get ratings, it's pathetic.
Yeah, I'm with you, Sammy. Anyway, so we're really sorry we're late, and I'm genuinely sorry for people that were texting in through the course of that interview saying, wow, can't believe this is Tom Cruise, how amazing is this, we're loving this interview, all that sort of stuff. I'm very sorry for you because there's something ghastly about being hoodwinked in a negative way.
That's right, it's betrayal.
Yeah.
That's the word for it. All our listeners have been betrayed, and we have.
Yeah, and these people are within our own company. 8:05. We will do 50 Grand Friday. That'll make us feel good. 50 Grand Friday coming in 20 minutes. Look, I suppose put it all in perspective. It's a radio interview, and who knows what will happen as a result of this. And it may be good. Maybe we'll get Tom Cruise. I still haven't given up my Mission Impossible.
No, you won't give up. That's your spirit.
And when you asked him that question, he said, I'd prefer not to answer. Well, I was a bit cold on him then anyway. I went a bit cold on him. So 50 Grand Friday coming up in 20 minutes, and possibly the crew cut. We'll see how we get on for time. And thank you. Can I thank you again? Sorry we've gone on, but thank you for the lovely, lovely, heartwarming text.